What's up, everybody? Thanks for clicking this video. Thanks for tuning into my channel. My name is Simon Hill, Black American from Louisiana, coming to you live from Budapest, Hungary. Today is June 11th, 2026, about 8 p.m. where I'm at right now, and we are continuing our 22nd book in our Book to React series, where we read an entire text cover to cover on live with the people, and we are deep off in Leon Trotsky's The One, the Only, the Man, the Myth, the Legend, and his tome, his 3-volume epic, The History of the Russian Revolution. My God, Volume 1 was a story, and Volume 2 is about to be a motherfucking movie. Ain't that a fact? Shout out to everybody up in the live stream right now. Shout out to everybody showing love over the past few days while I've been gone. You know, doing these live streams takes a lot of sacrifice. I sacrifice a lot of things. I sacrifice work sometimes, to my better judgment, or not to my better judgment. I sacrifice opportunities to have fun and disconnect and just be a normal fucking human. I sacrifice my health because I don't do my workouts when I should be. But I had to catch up on a few things over these past few days. But we are still consistently on track to knocking out and finishing this long-ass book that I am thoroughly enjoying, and hopefully you're enjoying it as well. In our previous episode, we read the introduction to Volume 2 and Volume 3 from Trotsky, where he goes over objectivity. What does it mean to be objective as a Marxist? How can we tell history? And what is the purpose, once again, of this book? So, I am looking forward to tackling the very first chapter of Volume 2, which we are behind on schedule, but it's better late than never. So that's what we're gonna continue to do. Shout out to Unknown0311. He says Carmelo Anthony is innocent. I don't know. I guess so. Or I guess not so, because he was found guilty by a jury of his peers, you know, an all-white jury in Texas with a few sprinkled Latinos and Indians in there. So if the criminal justice system in America is anything, it sure is efficient at making sure black bodies stay behind bars, or where justice is not served on behalf of black people. But I digress. This is not about being reactionary. This is not a reactionary YouTube channel. This isn't a channel where I just put in your face black pain and black pornography of suffering every single day. I don't do that. We are here to find solutions. We are here to find solutions to our issues. We are here to find ways of creating revolution so that we won't have to live under the evil, wicked American empire anymore. Our goal here is to find out how we can destroy America. Our goal here on this live stream and throughout my channel is find ways on how to destroy America from within and from without. Shout out to Unknown. He says he was convicted by an all-white jury that were descendants of slave owners. Well, there were some Indians in there. I do believe there were 3 people of color in the jury pool. But who knows? And who cares? Who cares? Who cares? I really don't care. I really don't care about the Carmelo Anthony case. This is a reactionary distraction to just tell you to, I don't know, get out there and vote harder. This is a reactionary distraction to make you feel like white supremacy cannot be defeated, that our suffering is meant to be, that it is perpetual and inevitable, which it is not. We are here to find solutions. We are here to find solutions on defeating white supremacy. And the only solution to defeating white supremacy, to destroying America, to seeing America go into the pits of hell and hellfire, and to the dusty history books where people hundreds of years now or a few generations from now won't even remember the United States of America. That's what we are here to do today. And that's why we are studying in depth, Leon Trotsky's The History of the Russian Revolution. It's been a long introduction. Let's just get into it, man. Chapter 23, The July Days, Preparation and Beginning. Trotsky says, in 1915, the war cost Russia 10 billion rubles. In 1916, 19 billion. During the first half of 1917, 10.5 billion. By the beginning of 1918, the national debt would have amounted to 60 billion. would have almost equaled, that is, the entire wealth of the country, estimated at $70 billion. The Central Executive Committee was preparing an appeal for a war loan under the sugary name of Liberty Loan, while the government was arriving at the not very complicated conclusion that without an immense new foreign loan, it not only could not pay for its foreign orders, but could not even handle its domestic obligations. The liability side of the trade balance was continually on the rise. The Entente was evidently getting ready to leave the ruble wholly to its fate. On the very day when the appeal for a Liberty loan filled the first page of the Soviet Izvestia, the government Vyestnik announced a sharp drop in the value of the ruble. The printing presses could no longer keep up with the tempo of inflation. For the old respectable banknotes, about which there still clung a glamour of their former buying power, they were getting ready to substitute those red bottle labels which came to be known as korenkis, both the bourgeois and the worker, each in his own way embodied in that name a slight note of disgust. In words, the government had adopted a program of state regulation of industry and had even established toward the end of June some lumbering institutions for this purpose. But the word and deed of the February regime, like the spirit and flesh of the pious Christian, were in a continual state of conflict. These appropriately hand-picked regulative institutions were more concerned to protect the capitalist from the caprices of a shaky and tottering state power than to curb the interest of private persons. The administrative and technical personnel of industry were becoming stratified. The upper layers, frightened by the leveling tendencies of the workers, were going over decisively to the side of the capitalist. The workers had acquired an attitude of disgust toward the war orders by which the disintegrating factories had been guaranteed for a year or two in advance. But the capitalists also were losing their taste for a production which promised more trouble than profits. The deliberate closing down of the factories from above was now becoming systematic. Metal production was cut down 40%, the textile industry 20%. The supply of all the necessities of life was inadequate. The workers were aspiring toward a control of that administrative commercial mechanism that in concealment from them decides their destinies. The Minister of Labor, Skobelev, was preaching to the workers in wordy manifestos the inadvisability of their interference in the administration of the factories. On June 24th, Izvestia told about a new proposal for the closing of a series of plants. Similar news was arriving from the provinces. Railroad transport was stricken even more heavily than industry. Half of the locomotives were in need of capital repairs. The greater part of the rolling stock was at the front. Fuel was lacking. The Ministry of Communications was in a continual state of struggle with the railroad workers and clerks. The supply of foodstuffs was steadily on the decrease. In Petrograd, the flour reserve was adequate for 10 or 15 days, in other centers for a little longer. With the semi-paralysis of rolling stock and the impending threat of a railroad strike, this meant a continual danger of famine. The future contained no glimmer of hope. This was not what the workers had expected from the revolution. Does this not sound like America right now? America continues to pump more and more money into the military-industrial complex for losing wars. Think about it. We have not won a war since World War II. America has not won a war since World War II, and yet every single year, these losers, these fucking losers in our military get a black budget, unlimited funds, money machine go for the military that continues to fucking lose wars. We can't even win against Iran. We can't even win against Iran, bruh. Come on now. Does this not sound like America? Continued money for a military that can't do shit, and then on top of that, infrastructure falling apart. People going to sleep without food in their bellies. More and more people struggling economically. Come on now. Come on now. And yes, Scrafty NO1 says the USSR won World War II. Facts! America didn't even win World War II. But since that was the only part that's the only time we've been a part of the winning team, Last time we were a part of the winning team was World War II. Last time we actually won some shit was the Civil War. And I'm not even standing up for American empire. Okay? So, I'm going to put Bob Dole in the gulag. Boy, Bob Dole, get the fuck out of here. We don't want to see your racist, white supremacist, crack ass around here. Go the fuck somewhere and have sex with children, you white supremacist bastard. Get the fuck out of here, okay? Unsightly coma. The question people should be asking is, did that boy have a knife at a track meet? I'm putting anybody that talks about Carmelo, boys, go to timeout. You go to timeout for 10 minutes and think about this. I want you to think about this if all you can think about is the reactionary, racist bullshit America pumps out in the media every single day to make white people and black people fight each other. I want you to think about this. Why are they doing this? Think about that. Why is the media always trying to make black people and white people fight each other? Do you think it's A, because actually they care about systemic oppression against black people? Or do you think it's B, capital has an interest in making sure white workers and black workers don't fucking strangle the billionaires? Tell me, after you think about that in timeout, come and tell me. Until then, shut the fuck up. I don't want to hear about Rick Chow. I don't want to hear about Carmelo Anthony. I want you to tell me why the media is always trying to make white people and black people in America fight each other. Tell me why. Until then, shut the fuck up forever. All right? Wiz Cowlian says capitalism is a bitch. It's the dirtiest bitch, and we want that bitch to die. Ain't that the truth? Okay? All right. Okay. Trail Wolf, I don't know what you're talking about. Bob's dumbass just makes shit up and argues against and claps his feet together when he responds to himself. Ain't that the truth? Okay? Wiz Cowlian is talking about the Gulf War. We did not win the Gulf War. Okay? All right? He was convicted by an all-white jury. Okay, so we got rid of all the white supremacists right now. All right. Yes. And as Anaikai Assad Charmant said, it's a plan from the elite. Facts. Yes. Thank you. Okay? So. All right. I don't know what RLH007 is saying. I'm going to put that motherfucker in timeout for 1 minute. Think about what you're saying. Actually relate to the text that we're reading or the questions that I'm asking. This is a classroom, you stupid son of a bitch, RLH. You dumb motherfucker. This is a fucking classroom. Okay? So talk about the topic at hand or get the fuck out and drop out. Okay? All right. Once again, Gavin. We are not talking about Carmelo Anthony. I know you see black people and all you think black people can talk about is racism, but we're here to talk about another R word, which is revolution. We are here to talk about reva-fucking-lution. We want America to burn. We want the American empire to burn. We want capitalism to be gone. We don't want to be caught up in the moment about the shit the capitalists put in our faces through their media that they own, CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, that just wants to make white people and black people fight each other. We don't give a fuck about none of that shit. You hear me? Now get the fuck out of here, you stupid son of a bitch. Continuing here. Trotsky says, things were still worse. If that is possible in the sphere of politics. Indecisiveness is the worst possible condition in the life of governments, nations, classes, as also of individuals. A revolution is the most ruthless of all methods of solving historic problems. Let's repeat that. Trotsky says a revolution is the most ruthless of all methods of solving historic problems. If you want to solve racism, what do we solve it with? What's the most historic problem in America? Racism, white supremacy. You could also throw in sexism, a genocide against the indigenous people. What's the best way to solve that? A fucking revolution. To introduce evasiveness into a revolution is the most destructive policy imaginable. The party of revolution dare not waver. No more than a surgeon dare who has plunged a knife into a sick body. However, the double regime or regime of duplicity, which issued from the February overturn, was indecisiveness organized. Everything was going against the government. Its qualified friends were becoming opponents. Its opponents, enemies. Its enemies were taking arms. The counter-revolution was mobilizing quite in the open, inspired by the Central Committee of the Cadet Party, the political staff of all those who had something to lose. The head committee of the League of Officers at General Headquarters in Mogilev, representing about 100,000 discontented commanders, and the Council of the Union of Cossack Troops in Petrograd were the two military levers of the counter-revolution. The State Duma, in spite of the decision of the June Congress of Soviets, had resolved to continue its private conferences. Its Provisional Committee supplied a legal covering for the counter-revolutionary work, which was broadly financed by the banks and by the embassies of the Entente. The compromisers were threatened with dangers both right and left. Glancing uneasily in these two directions, the government secretly resolved to make a disbursement for the organization of a public intelligence service, that is, a secret political police. At about this same time, in the middle of June, the government designated September 17th as the date for elections to the Constituent Assembly. The liberal press, in spite of the participation of cadets in the ministry, waged a stubborn campaign against this officially designated date, in which nobody believed, in which nobody seriously defended. The very image of the Constituent Assembly, so bright in the first days of March, had dissolved and grown dim. Everything was going against the government, even its own thin-blooded good intentions. Only on the 30th of June did it muster the courage to dismiss those aristocratic guardians over the villages, the Zemsky Nashalniks, whose very name had been hateful to the whole country ever since the days of the establishment by Alexander III. I assume that the Zemsky Nachalniks are like land barons, I guess what you would call a landed gentry who were ruling over the peasants there. And this enforced and belated partial reform only stamped the provisional government with a brand of contemptible cowardice. The nobility were by this time recovering from their fright. The landed proprietors were uniting and bringing pressure to bear. Toward the end of June, the Provisional Committee of the Duma addressed to the government a demand that decisive measures be taken to protect the landlords from peasants incited by the criminal element. On the 1st of July, there met in Moscow an all-Russian Congress of landed proprietors, containing an overwhelming majority of nobles. The government wriggled and tried to hypnotize with words, now the muzhiks, now the landlords. All right, go in here. It's Jimmy. I'll show you. Is this AI? You can think about if it's AI in the gulag. Don't ever come around here again, Jimmy. Get the fuck out of here. Okay? Shout out to Archit man. Archit. What's up, my man? You look great. Have a good day, by the way, and take a deep breath. I'm not taking a fucking breath. I'm not taking no fucking breath. We're not taking a breath. Revolution requires all parts of the body. Okay? Go in here. Wiz Cowley, man, you want to know what sucks ass despite every method with the public being infuriated. They know damn full well they can't do anything consider the government suppress the words. Well, they won't suppress my words. As long as I have a voice, I'm going to continue to speak out against white supremacy, racial capitalism, and advocate for socialism. Okay? So, shout out to Scrafty N01. He says, it's the only thing that could save our lives, and it takes both you and I to work for it. Absolutely. That's what we have to do. Solidarity. Array Sadal is really fucking stupid. He's asking, whose article are you reading? You're really fucking dumb. RLH says, Beck Scraft. Okay, welcome back, RLH. Hopefully you're paying attention. And now, can you answer my question? Can you answer my question, RLH, that I was asking earlier about Carmelo Anthony and all the other stuff related to the reactionary, racist content that we're fed every day? Who else? Who else needs to go? Wiz Cowley, man, says, and even if we pass the government torch to the people, some jackass will rule over the people and become more evil, what he promised, like Robespierre or something. I disagree. Once again, we don't want to hand power to one man. We want to hand power to the people. We want Soviets. We want Soviets in America. We want a Soviet America. All right. Continuing here. Worst of all, however, was the situation at the front. The offensive against the enemy, which had also become Kerensky's decisive play in a domestic struggle, was dying in convulsions. The soldiers did not want to fight. The diplomats of Prince Lvov were afraid to look the diplomats of the Entente in the eyes. They needed a loan to the point of desperation in order to make a show of firmness. The condemned and impotent government waged an offensive against Finland, carrying it through, as it did all of its very dirtiest work, by the hands of the socialists. At the same time, a conflict had arisen with the Ukraine and was moving toward an open break. All right, we're going to send Lilith Lilith, you're going to the gulag. If I'm delusional, you think about what your life is like as you make big rocks into little rocks every day with a tiny, tiny hammer. Okay? Get the fuck out of here, Lilith. All right? So, shout out to Montauk as well. He's going to the gulag. Get the fuck out of here as well. Boom. It's going to be so fun. Any of you other white supremacists, racist, pro-capitalists, libertarians, all of you can go to work today. We'll send you to Angola. Trust me, we can send you to that plantation. Okay? Continuing here. Those days were far away when Albert Thomas sang hymns to the luminous revolution and to Kerensky. At the beginning of July, the French ambassador, Paleologue, who smelled too strongly of the aromas of the Rasputin salons, was replaced by the radical Newlands. The journalist Claude Annette gave the new ambassador an introductory lecture on Petrograd. Opposite the French embassy, he told him, across the Neva, spreads the Viborg district. This is a district of big factories which belongs wholly to the Bolsheviks. Lenin and Trotsky reign there as masters. In that same district are located the barracks of the machine gun regiment, numbering about 10,000 men and over 1,000 machine guns. Neither the Social Revolutionaries nor the Mensheviks have access to the barracks of that regiment. The remaining regiments are either Bolshevik or neutral. If Lenin and Trotsky want to take Petrograd, what will stop them? Newlands listened with astonishment. How can the government tolerate such a situation? But what can it do? Answered the journalist. It must understand that the government has no power but a moral one, and even that seems to me very weak. All right? Shout out to Silent Mock. Silent Mock, we got to put you in timeout. You're over here trolling. We're over here reading. You just want to make stupid jokes. We're here to learn. Get the fuck out of my classroom. Get the fuck out of my classroom. Go to the re-education camp where they'll force you to learn some shit. Continuing here. Finding no channel, the aroused energy of the masses spent itself in self-dependent activities, guerrilla manifestations, sporadic seizures. The workers, soldiers, and peasants were trying to solve, in a partial way, those problems which the power created by them had refused to solve. More than anything else, indecisiveness in their leaders exhausts the nerves of the masses. Fruitless waiting impels them to more and more insist knockings at the door that will not open to them, or to actual outbreaks of despair. Already in the days of the Congress of Soviets, when the provincials could hardly withhold the hands of their leaders stretched out against Petrograd, the workers and soldiers had plenty of opportunity to find out what was the feeling and attitude toward them of the Soviet leaders. Tsetserelli, following Kerensky, had become not only an alien but a hated figure to the majority of the Petrograd workers and soldiers. On the fringes of the revolution, there was a growing influence of the anarchist, whose chief role so far had been played in the self-constituted Revolutionary Committee in the summer home of Durnovo. But even the more disciplined layers of the workers, even broad circles of the party, were beginning to lose patience, or at least listen to those who had lost it. The manifestation of June 18th had revealed to everybody that the government was without support. Why don't they get busy up there? The soldier and workers would ask, having in mind not only the compromised leaders, but also the governing bodies of the Bolsheviks. Okay? So, shout out to Scrafty N01. He says, I've just gotten a text from a surveyor saying, we're gathering opinions on whether taking early action early can help prevent large wars. Scrafty, talk about the fucking text, okay? I'm serious. I'm telling all of you. If you're not talking about the text, then I don't want to hear shit you got to say, okay? So, another thing I have to say right here. Trotsky is talking about, the Soviets are gaining more and more power. They've basically taken over the entire city of Petrograd. The workers are moving further and further to the left, just like it is in our timeline right now. We have many people who have college degrees, no college degrees, people working in service industries, people working in high finance, doctors, accountants, architects, low class, high class, anybody who is not a part of the 1% in America is moving further and further to the economic left. We're sick of dealing with this bullshit of depressed wages, lowering living standards, and the only thing that we can look forward to is buying a bigger truck, okay? This is why the American dream has turned into an American nightmare. The same way in Trotsky's time, people were looking forward to the opportunity to make a better living for their family, working in the factories, joining up for the army. And then what did they get instead? Lost fingers, lost eyes, broken backs, going out to the front lines, getting shot at with no guns to shoot back, etc., etc. The same shit that we're dealing with now in America is what Russia was dealing with pre the revolution, okay? So we're living through revolutionary times, but it's up to us leftists, it's up to us communists, us socialists, to continue to raise the class consciousness of people. Which is why, once again, for anybody who comes to here to ask about the reactionary events that are happening today. Little black boy shot in the back by the police. Okay, I'm not going to cry. I keep telling you motherfuckers every single day that this is going to happen. Who cares? I don't care anymore. I don't care anymore that they're shooting niggas in the back. All I want to know is how we going to blow up the White House. Facts. I'm not caring anymore about, some buttfuck racist redneck in South Carolina shoots a little black boy for playing rap music too loud. All I want to know is how can we blow up the Pentagon? Facts. That's all I want to hear about. You know what I'm saying? We're living through revolutionary times, but too many of us on the left are reactionary. We get caught up in left-wing reactionaryism. Just getting upset, getting mad, crying over niggas getting killed in the street. Niggas die every day, B, like Cameron said. Niggas die every day, B. Now how can we make them suffer? How can we make the capitalists, the ruling class, the warmongers, the Epstein class, how can we make them suffer? That's all I'm concerned with. You get what I'm saying? Which is why we will continue to read Leon Trotsky's History of the Russian Revolution. But what do you think? Since I have such a large audience here right now of people that just want to chat away, should we be more concerned about police shooting niggas in the back? Or should we be actually concerned with how we can shoot back? I want to ask y'all, okay? I want to ask y'all, what should we be concerned with? What should we be concerned with? Police shooting niggas in the back or how we can shoot back? Okay? Tell me, okay? Continuing here. Under inflation prices, the struggle for wages was exciting the workers and getting on their nerves. During June, this question became especially sharp in the giant Putilov factory, where 36,000 men worked. On June 21st, a strike of skilled workers broke out in certain parts of the factory. The fruitlessness of the scattered outbreaks was only too clear to the party. On the next day, a meeting of representatives of the principal workers' organization, led by the Bolsheviks and of 70 factories, announced that the cause of the Putilov workers is the cause of the whole Petrograd proletariat, but appealed to the Putilov men to restrain their legitimate indignation. The strike was postponed, but the following 12 days brought no change. The factory masses were seething, seeking an outlet. Every plant had its conflict, and all these conflicts tended upward toward the government. A report of the trade union of the Locomotive Brigade to the Minister of Communications reads, "For the last time, we announce patience has its limit. We simply cannot live in such conditions." That was a complaint not only against want and hunger, but against duplicity, characterlessness, false dealing. The report protests with especial rage against the endless exhorting of us to the duties of a citizen and to a self-restraint in starvation. Facts, okay? So, shout out to Scrafty NO1. He says, we have to keep up outreach, exactly what you're doing. You need to find a bigger platform, but nobody will go outside. Could door knocking be effective? Americans don't respond to literate arguments. Facts. I'm glad Scrafty NO1 realizes that most Americans are fucking stupid. Most Americans are pretty fucking stupid. Haven't read a book in years, didn't even graduate high school. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of stupid ass Americans who definitely fall into right-wing propaganda, of course. So I'm glad you realize that. I'm a part of a group. I suggest everybody out here join your local leftist organization. Get organized. Of course, it's not just about staying on the internet. I'm a member of the CPUSA. Okay? I'm a member of the CPUSA. And if the CPUSA is not your fucking boat, get along with the DSA. Or the Party for Socialism and Revolution. A Party for Socialism and Liberation, the PSL. Join a fucking group. I don't care if it's a fucking leftist book club or if you have to start it. Like you said, Scrafty NO1, we have to be out there in the community and get organized with other people. So, yeah, I'm not just on here blabbing all day and reading books all day to an audience of two. I'm actually a part of groups. And while I am abroad right now, even while I'm abroad in Hungary, I'm a member of a leftist organization out here as well. You know what I'm saying? So I'm always trying to be in community and in contact with other people who are like-minded and raising consciousness and reforming this, actually not reforming, revolting against the society and creating a new. Okay, 03 Sanat says over 50% of U.S. adults read below a 6th grade level. Well, if you're here, 03 Sanat, and you're following along with the books that I'm reading, then you're not a part of that 50%. You're a part of the other 50%. Hopefully you stick around. But I think you will prove to yourself what line in the sand you're on. Because I'm over here reading these books, making them as interesting and engaging as possible for the people and as accessible. But if you don't stick around for it, I guess, that also shows your character. Because we can't only just criticize how stupid Americans are. We have to actually do the work to educate ourselves as well. All right, Scrafty one says, I believe we need to clutch onto the class divide and use that first and foremost. Facts, absolutely, because everybody can also understand that shit is getting more expensive, the rent is too damn high, and there's no health care, there's no safety net. We're fucked in America, okay? So, yeah. Shout out to M. Joyner Swarath, Mr. M. John. I can't pronounce. Some of y'all need better names. Anyway, he says having useless college degrees does not make you smart either. Well, you know what does make you smart? Being able to string together a sentence. Because what you said is having useless college degrees, does it make you smart either? That sentence makes no fucking sense. Once again, 50% of Americans can't read at a 5th grade level, and also they can't write as well, as L. Joyner's Wrath says. The real Taylor Nagard, how about the Knicks went away? I'm going to send you to where you can watch the Knicks, you stupid motherfucker. You can go to the re-education camp. They have a very good TV in there. You can watch the Knicks all day. We're not here to talk about the Knicks. Okay? All right? M. Joyner Stoff is referencing a book that he read 10 or 12 years ago, probably the only book he's ever read. I hate when people come in here and say, this book says this, when he's not talking about the book we're reading now, you dumb son of a bitch. M. Joyner's Wrath is really fucking stupid as well. Socialism is a lie. We got to get Bobo out of here. Go to the gulag, you stupid son of a bitch. All right? Who else needs to go? All right. Any of you others? Okay. Last comment I'm going to read before I jump back into the book, and I'm also glad none of you are answering my fucking question. Because I asked you a very pertinent question, but all of you are really fucking stupid to show how smart you are by dunking on other people and not actually talking about the book. Should we be concerned about the police shooting niggas in the back, or should we be actually concerned on how to blow up the fucking Pentagon? And that might sound like a fed-ass question. It might sound like there's a wire under this bitch, but that's a real thing. Because I'm concerned with revolution. I'm concerned with bringing back the Black Liberation Army. I'm concerned with that type of shit. How can we have an American Hamas? That's what I'm concerned with. How can we have a liberatory militant party, or a militant party with a armed wing for an armed struggle for liberation? But y'all want to talk about stupid shit. So I'm asking y'all, should we be concerned about Carmelo Anthony getting 35 years in jail and a Chinese Asian man shooting a nigga in the back? Or should we be concerned with how can we bring back the BLA? Okay, I've asked y'all. Okay, all right. So answer me that. Until then, I'm not reading any. Okay, I'm putting the combat donkey up in the gulag because that's a white supremacist. Okay, all right, Diggy. If you're watching this with your family, I make this absolutely not for kids. Get the fuck out of here and fuck your kids, nigga. Fuck your fucking kids, nigga. This is not for kids. This is not for kids. This is for grown folks. I'm over here talking about the Pentagon getting blown up. You over here got your whole family watching with popcorn and shit. Get the fuck out of here, nigga. All right? Anti-spiral, pay attention, putting you in timeout. Y'all are really fucking up the flow because y'all are really not adding anything. Okay? All right? All right. Samarif said a bad joke. All right. Go into the re-education camp. I have zero tolerance today. Okay? Scrafty NO1 says, I've been trying to find local SRA chapters. There are only a few in the state. I believe I should start designing pamphlets and handing them out in the library or other public spaces. That's a good idea. If you can't find your own leftist organization nearby, if you can't find them, start your own. Okay? All right? Shout out to David. I know what I will win. I will win in sending you to the gulag. All right? We're sending more and more people out of here, and I'm actually very happy about it. It's time we separate. It's time we separate, okay? I'm not scared about being in the minority, like Lenin taught us. We should not be scared, okay? But once again, y'all are not answering the question, but I digress. All right, continuing here, Trotsky continues to speak from the grave. He says, under inflation prices, The struggle for wages was exciting the workers and getting on their nerves. During June, this question became especially sharp in the giant Putilov factory, where 36,000 men worked. On June 21st, a strike of skilled workers broke out in certain parts of the factory. The fruitlessness of these scattered outbreaks was only too clear to the party. On the next day, a meeting of representatives of the principal workers' organizations, led by the Bolsheviks and of 70 factories, announced that the cause of the Putilov workers is the cause of the whole Petrograd proletariat, but appealed to the Putilov men to restrain their legitimate indignation. The strike was postponed, but the following 12 days brought no change. The factory masses were seething, seeking an outlet. Every plant had its conflict, and all these conflicts tended upward toward the government. A report of the trade union of the locomotive brigade to the Minister of Communication reads, "For the last time, we announce patience has its limit. We simply cannot live in such conditions." That was a complaint not only against want and hunger, but against duplicity, characterlessness, false dealing. The report protests with especial rage against the endless exhorting of us to the duties of a citizen and to self-restraint and starvation. All right? So shout out to the Wasaru. Wasaru sent over some Turkish lira. So marhaba, nasılsın to all my Turkish people out there. He says, can you do a shout out to my homie? His name is Sherhat, and he's a big fan of your streams. Shout out to Sherhat. Much love to Sherhat. Hopefully that's not a racial slur. Hopefully that doesn't mean bitch or the N-word or any other slur for any other group of people. 200 Turkish lira is like, what, $2 or so. So he might have just made me say something that I probably would not agree with if I knew what it meant. But if Sherhat is a real person, then shout out to Sherhat. Okay? So shout out to Highlight with a semi-good question, even though it's unrelated to the text. What do I think about the Yugoslav self-management model? While I am not as versed on Yugoslavia's economics and socio-economic structure, I do have memories of being in Serbia and in Bosnia and also Macedonia, and you will be surprised how many people you meet that really want Yugoslavia back. I think we tend to think of all these socialist countries as just failures and the people overthrew them, when really they fell apart and the people had no say in it. Similar to how now, if America just sort of fell apart like how it almost did on January 6th back in 2022, right? Most people in America would not have agreed with it. But most revolutions are done by a minority of people, a loud, vocal, passionate minority. And that's what happened, in my opinion, from understanding what happened in Yugoslavia, what happened in the USSR, what's going to happen, unfortunately, possibly to Cuba as well. Outside influences, very strong, powerful people are able to make things happen, okay, that also put people out. All right, so yeah, sorry about the white supremacists jumping in here. Okay, yeah. So Aces D-Man 7 says cops are just stormtroopers. Blacks are less than 50% of the population, but 50% of the crime. Yeah, white supremacists, you gotta go. He's gotta go. White supremacists gotta go. Sorry, everybody who's up in the live stream and the white supremacists keep hopping in. If you want to be a moderator and I can trust you to get rid of white supremacists, please volunteer. Please volunteer, because I will give you powers to send people to the re-education camp or the gulag. I don't have any of my commissars in here to hold it down to make sure the stream stays white supremacist free and capitalist bootlicker free. But I'm trying my best here. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to respond to comments. I'm trying to read the text. And I'm also trying to give commentary as well. But if any of you want to be a commissar, if you want to be a commissar in the Simon Soviet Republic for the people, please volunteer so that you can help get the white supremacists and the fascists out of here. Okay? Continuing here, Trotsky says, the March transfer of power by the Executive Committee to the Provisional Government had been made on the condition that the revolutionary troops should not be removed from the capital. But those days were far in the past. The garrison had moved to the left. The ruling Soviet circles to the right. The struggle with the garrison had never disappeared from the order of the day. Although no whole units were transferred from the capital, nevertheless, the more revolutionary, under the pretext of strategic necessities, were systematically weakened by a pumping out of replacement companies. Rumors from the front of the disbandment of more and more units for disobedience, for refusal to carry out military orders, were continually arriving at the capital. 2 Siberian divisions, and were not the Siberian sharpshooters long considered the finest, had to be disbanded by military force in a case of mass disobedience in the 5th Army only, the nearest the capital. 87 officers and 12,725 soldiers were arraigned. The Petrograd garrison, accumulators of discontent from the front, the village, the workers' districts, and the barracks, was in a continual ferment. Bearded men in their 40s were demanding with hysterical insistence that they be sent home for work in the fields. The regiments distributed through the Vyborg district, the 1st Machine Gun, the 1st Grenadier, the Moscow, the 180th Infantry, and others, were continually washed by the hot springs of the proletarian suburb. Thousands of workers were passing the barracks, among them no small number of tireless agitators of Bolshevism. Under those dirty and dilapidated walls, impromptu meetings were being held almost continuously. On the 22nd of June, before the patriotic manifestations called out by the offensive had died out, an automobile of the executive committee incautiously drove through the Samsonevsky Prospect, carrying the placard "Forward for Kerensky." The Moscow regiment stopped the agitators, tore up the placard, and turned over the patriotic automobile to the machine gun regiment. So this relates to something that I've been thinking about a lot. What Trotsky is saying here is that the army is mass defecting. They no longer want to support the government that no longer has legitimacy from the people. And I think a lot of us leftists are putting our hopes in the gun. I said earlier that we should bring back the Black Liberation Army. I don't think that we should just all go to our local gun shop and start buying guns. I don't think that we need to even deal in the illegal arms market. I think a successful revolution comes from successful propaganda, successful agitation, successful consciousness raising. If we are successful in propaganda and consciousness raising, the guns will come to us. I promise you, because that's what happened here. That's what happened here in the Russian Revolution. The police, the soldiers, gave the guns to the workers. If we are able to pierce the minds of the working class people who are being abused by this capitalist system, and that also includes police and soldiers, the guns will come to us. I know it takes a lot of almost Confucian levels of patience, and wisdom to look that far. But when we buy guns, when we participate in the economy of the small arms in America, all we are doing is abetting capitalists. All we are doing is letting capital play us. Because the way the working class has been divided is by literally fearing each other. Those people are going to shoot me. Poor people are going to shoot me. Black people are going to shoot me. White people are going to shoot me. I'm scared of everybody. I need a gun. And who gets paid? Just like Kanye said, a white man gets paid off of all of that. But in this case, the capitalist gets paid off of all of that. And all we get in return are mass shootings in schools. I'm telling you, a lot of us have discontent against the police, and a lot of us have, rightfully placed our anger at some of the American military, right? While the American empire is entirely trash, the American military-industrial complex is totally trash. We shouldn't just turn our backs and denigrate, I would say, soldiers and police off rip. Because those are working class people who have just been deluded into false consciousness and working against their own material interest. But what do you think? Since I have a bunch of people in the comment section talking about all types of other shit instead of the fucking book, I want to ask you, what do you think? Should us leftists actually be in pursuit of getting these guns and training ourselves with weapons? Or should we be focused on propaganda to the maximum extent? Should we be focused on raising people's consciousness? Okay? So, all right. All right, go in here to the comments because there's a lot of comments in here. Once again, none of you are actually paying attention because I asked for volunteers to be commissars to get out the white supremacists. Last comment I checked is a full-on white supremacist up in here. So all of you who are not paying attention to what I'm saying, I'm going to start kicking you out. I don't give a fuck if this stream has 15 people or 15,000 people. If you're not engaged with the text, I don't care who you are. I will kick you out if you're not answering the questions. Okay? All right. So, Synod, oh yeah, you got to go too. Yeah, we're not doing that African sold other African shit. Okay? Race theory is real. Yeah, all white supremacists must die. Total Nazi death. Okay? All right, yeah, total Nazi death, total white supremacist death. Go kill yourself, you fascist scum. Okay, go in here. Cameron Winstead, only action makes changes, not words. Words are the start. You need to make action to make change is all I'm going to say. Yeah, but words are action. Some of the most powerful things in this world are words. Literally, the Lord God, if you are a Christian, says, I am the Word. Words move mountains. Muhammad has been dead for 1,400 years. Yet and still, you say Muhammad's name wrong in certain parts of the world, motherfuckers going upside your head. You get what I'm saying? You say something wrong about Jesus Christ in the wrong part of the Bible Belt, motherfuckers going upside your head. So, yeah, words are very powerful. Words can change the world. Okay? So, go in here. Highlight says, A People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn was the first book I read that really outlined how colonial powers enslaved Africans and Native Americans for financial and territorial gain. That's very good. Now, Highlight, do you have anything to say about what I'm saying, or do you just want to come here and spout shit? Okay? Talk about the fucking book. Talk about my questions. Okay? Cameron is still going off about what he just wants to talk about. So yeah, Highlight says, yes, we need to build class consciousness among people. I see a lot of people who think that liberalism and the left are the same. That is a problem. Okay, Cargo Crew asks, what is your channel about? It's about knowledge. It's about book reviews, movie reviews, and general, intelligent shit. I try to keep it classy and smart around here. Stick around if you like. If you don't want to, get the fuck on, and I will help you do that. Okay? What else? So once again, I asked a question. Nobody wants to answer. Should us leftists? All right, Michael Berry, get the fuck on. All right, Michael Berry, go somewhere else. Get out. Michael Bernhardt, get the fuck out of here. Anyway, once again, I asked the question, should us leftists be more focused on getting guns, training with guns, starting paramilitary groups, or should we be actually focused on propaganda to the maximum degree? I know that might sound contradictory coming from me when I literally just said we should start up the BLA again, but all I'm saying is that you could have the Black Liberation Army training without guns. You don't need to have arms training or even have arms in possession. You get what I'm saying? But you do need people to be ready for when the arms come to us to be able to make sure that the will of the people is carried out. All right? I'm going to continue here. In general, Trotsky says, the soldiers were more impatient than the workers, both because they were directly threatened with a transfer to the front and because it was much harder for them to understand considerations of political strategy. Moreover, each one had his rifle, and ever since February, the soldier had been inclined to overestimate the independent power of a rifle. An old worker Bolshevik, Lizdin, told later how the soldiers of the 180th Reserve Regiment said to him, "What are they doing there, fast asleep in Kaczynski's palace? Come on, let's kick out Kerensky." At meetings of the regiments, resolutions would be adopted continually, proclaiming the necessity of taking final action against the government. Delegations from individual factories would come to a regiment with the query, will the soldiers go into the streets? The machine gunners sent representatives to the other units of the garrison with an appeal to rise against the prolongation of the war. The more impatient of these delegates added, the Pavlov and Moscow regiments and 40,000 Putilov men are coming out tomorrow. Official admonitions from the executive committee had no effect. The danger was growing every minute that Petrograd, lacking the support of the front and the provinces, would be broken down bit by bit. On the 21st of June, Lenin appealed in Pravda to the Petrograd workers and soldiers to wait until events should bring over the heavy reserves to the side of Petrograd. We understand your bitterness. We understand the excitement of the Petersburg workers. But we say to them, comrades, an immediate attack would be inexpedient. On the next day, a private conference of leading Bolsheviks, standing apparently to the left of Lenin, came to the conclusion that in spite of the mood of the soldier and worker masses, they must not give battle. Better wait until the ruling parties have disgraced themselves completely with their offensive, and then the game is on. And then the game is ours. Thus reports the strict organizer Lot Cease, one of the most impatient in those days. The Central Committee was oftener and oftener compelled to send agitators to the troops and the factories to restrain them from untimely action. With an embarrassed shake of the head, the Viborg Bolsheviks would complain to their friends, "We have to play the part of the fire hose." Appeals to come into the street did not cease, however, for a single day. Some of them were obviously provocative in character. The military organization of the Bolsheviks felt compelled to address the soldiers and workers with an appeal. Do not trust any summons to go into the street in the name of the military organization. The military organization is not summoning you to action. And then, even more insistently, demand of any agitator or orator who summons you to come out in the name of the military organization credentials signed by the president and secretary. So what Lenin is saying here, what Trotsky is saying that Lenin said, is that essentially people were ready to go to war against the government. The workers had basically taken over the city of Petrograd. Many of the soldiers and police had come over to the side of the workers and said, "We're sick of representing this fake-ass government. We're riding with the workers." And they're ready to go outside. But Lenin is saying, no, we need more soldiers. The gun must come to us. Meaning that we're waiting for more soldiers to even defect to our side. Now, for any of you who's ever read The Art of War, Sun Tzu says that the best battle is the one you don't even have to fight. The best battle is one you don't even have to fight. Now, a lot of us leftists think that it's impossible to overthrow the American empire, the white supremacist, fascistic, evil empire that we live with in the world called America. They believe it's impossible because America has a mighty military industrial force. We have, nukes and submarines and all sorts of shit. But what is at the root of any institution? It is its people. It is its people, and the people that primarily make up the base of the American military industrial complex are poor working class people. Facts. Sure, some people go up in economic rank when they join the military. They get their Hellcats and Chargers and their apartments with a badass Hawaiian broad and pop out like 37 mongrel kids with her. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, they do that. But still, by and large, those people have working class sensibility. So they realize that the system is fucked. That made them join that shit in the first place. You mean I had to risk my life just to get a Hellcat, a Charger, an apartment in Honolulu, and a badass Hawaiian broad? That's what it took for me to risk my life in Afghanistan and Iraq? Fuck this fucking country. You get what I'm saying? There's a lot of people like that in the military. So it doesn't matter how many fucking drones they have, nukes they have, supersonic planes that break the speed barrier, if they don't have people that believe in the government to fly them, to drop those bombs, to man those tanks, to man those subs, etc., etc. So therefore, I'm asking all of you who are chatting away in the comments, answer me this question. And if I don't get an answer, I'm just going to start blocking people, because I would much rather talk to one person who's engaged in the text than 20 of you who are talking about bullshit. I'm asking you this. Whether you agree or not, do you think it's possible for us communists and socialists to have mass defections from the military, to cause mass defections from the military? Do you think it's possible? I think it's highly possible. I have revolutionary optimism. And I do believe this is a failure of the left. Most people are talking about how the working class, the white working class, has been left behind by the left. But I would argue that while, yes, we do need to appeal to the white working class, though I do have some issues with how that is framed in a lot of ways, but I do think we also need to stop calling all cops bastards and do some real type of propaganda. Okay? So Jonathan Buchika says, I agree with mass defections. Scrafty NO1 says, yes, it's absolutely possible. I agree with that as well. So I also agree with you turning the foot cam back on. Okay. All right. Jonathan Buchika, you're going to the gulag. Okay. All right. If you gain any traction in that, you would just disappear. No, I don't think so. They can't make us all disappear. Okay. All right. Why don't you just leave? That's like the battle you don't want to fight. Okay, it's not just American military power, but also soft power. I think May is new here. Okay, I might have to ban May too. Man, May, should I ban you? Okay, I think I should ban May. Tell me, y'all, should I ban May? I think May 123J needs to go, but y'all let me know in the comments. Should I ban her? Should I send her to the gulag? I think she deserves it. I don't know what she's talking about in the chat, but I would love to ban her if she is being a nuisance. Okay? All right. We're sending Nick out of here as well. All right. It depends on what she says next. Okay. You know what? I'm going to make Scrafty. Scrafty, because you've actually been, engaged in the conversation. Like I said, I would rather talk to one intelligent person in dealing with the text rather than a bunch of people just sprouting it out. I'm going to make you a moderator. Okay? I'm going to make you a moderator. Scrafty, I want you to now try to block or put in timeout any white supremacists, fascist, people derailing the conversation. Okay? Scrafty, you are now a managing moderator. Okay? That means you can ban people. Okay? I'm asking you to ban people that are explicitly white supremacists, explicitly fascistic, explicitly derailing the conversation. If I see you abusing those powers, I will remove the managing moderator status from you. Okay? All right? Greasy Ronnie putting up Israeli flags. All right, this is your first test, Scrafty. Greasy Ronnie has to go. I don't care if you put him in timeout or if you ban him. Throwing up Israeli flags? No. Yeah. No. All right, so now everybody salute the commissar, Scrafty. No one, Scrafty, no one is up in here. All right, we're gonna make sure that this chat remains white supremacist free, fascist free as well. All right. And we're going to also put this guy here. I'm going to put him in timeout for 1 minute because we are here to talk about Trotsky's text. We are not here to talk about do I go to the gym. All right. The American flag. No, that's the evil empire too. Yeah. No American flags. No American flags. No American flags, I would say. Yeah, no. No. Unless you're throwing it up to, like, say, to make a point. To make a good point. With just waving the flag on some patriotic shit? No, you gotta go. All right, continuing here. Trotsky says, on the famous Yakorny Square in Kronstadt, where the anarchists were more and more confidently lifting their voices, one ultimatum was drawn, up after another. On the 23rd of June, delegates from Yakorny Square, acting over the head of the Kronstadt Soviet, demanded from the Ministry of Justice the liberation of a group of Petrograd anarchists, threatening, in case their demand was not granted, that the sailors would march on the prison. Upon the following day, representatives from Honoreinbaum informed the Ministry of Justice that their garrison was as much disturbed about the arrest in the summer home of Dernovo as Kronstadt, and that they were already cleaning the machine guns. The bourgeois press caught these threats on the wing and shook them under the very noses of their compromisist allies. On June 26th, delegates from the Grenadier Guard Regiment came from the front to their reserve battalion with the announcement, the regiment is against the Provisional Government and demands the transfer of power to the Soviets. It declines the offensive begun by Kerensky and expresses an apprehension lest the Executive Committee has gone over along with the Minister Socialists to the side of the bourgeoisie. The organ of the Executive Committee published a reproachful account of this visit. Not only Kronstadt was boiling like a kettle, but also the whole Baltic fleet, with its principal base in Helsingfors. The head boss of the Bolsheviks in the fleet was undoubtedly Antonov Ovchinko, who years ago, as a young officer, had taken part in the Sebastopol insurrection of 1905. A Menshevik during the reaction years, an emigrant internationalist during the war, a colleague of Trotsky on Nashi Slovo in Paris, he joined the Bolsheviks after his return from abroad. Politically shaky but personally courageous, impulsive and disorderly but capable of initiative and improvisation, Antonov Ovchinko, although still little known in those days, was to play by no means the smallest role in the future events of the revolution. We in the Helsingfors committee of the party, he relates in his memoirs, understood the necessity of restraint and serious preparation. We had directions to that effect, moreover, from the Central Committee. But we saw the utter inevitability of an explosion, and we're looking with alarm toward Petersburg. And in Petersburg, the elements of an explosion were piling up day by day. The 2nd Machine Gun Regiment, which was less advanced than the 1st, adopted a resolution demanding the transfer of power to the Soviet. The 3rd Infantry Regiment refused to send out 14 replacement companies. Meetings in the barracks were acquiring a more and more stormy character. A meeting of the Grenadier Regiment on July 1st was signalized by the arrest of the president of the committee and by the obstructive heckling of the Menshevik orators. Down with the offensive, down with Kerensky. At the focus of the garrison stood the machine gun men. It was only they who opened the sluices for the July flood. So, once again, I have to say, Trotsky is laying out how the army was very involved with a successful revolution in Russia as well. And also, interestingly, like constantly continuing to pop up in the story, the anarchists are, I guess in a roundabout way, helping the revolution by continuing to put, pressure on the government to relinquish its control. For example, the anarchists are trying to break people out of prison and stuff like that. So I'm asking any of the socialists in here who do believe in the state, in the idea that states are necessary, even if the end goal of the state is for its own abolition. I want to ask the communists, the socialists, Marxists in here in general, how do we feel about anarchists? Can we collaborate with the anarchists right now in our battle against capital? Can we? Can we? I know there are stupid people like anarcho-capitalists and stuff like that, or ANCAP, or anarcho-primitivist. But in general, can people of the left-wing anarchist tradition be considered allies in our fight against capital and American empire right now? What do you all think? I have a very active audience right now. Tell me what you all think. Okay? So are you with Mr. Hinkle? No. No, yeah, I'm not with the American Communist Party. It's CPUSA. CPUSA, the old party. I'm just a good old boy. I'm just a Southern boy. Who likes tradition. I'm a Southern man. I'm an Alabama-born, Louisiana-raised Southern man, Southern gentleman. And I like my party the old way, the old communist way. The party over 100 years old, possibly one of the oldest parties in American political life. Only after the Democrats, I believe, because the Democrats have been around since, the mid-19th century, but the communists started in the late 19th century. You get what I'm saying? So I think, they're a bit older. Anyway. So, Spain and Ukraine, for example, paradoxically says Marxists always purge anarchists in the end. Spain and Ukraine, for example, facts. But just because that's the way things were, doesn't mean that's the way it always has to be. Paradoxically, if I said white people in the end always kill black people, would I say that we can't have white comrades? Black people and white people can't be comrades? No, I would never be that reactionary. So let's actually make an argument not based upon history. I could easily say, paradoxically, because you look like a crack-ass cracker, that your crack-ass cracker ways will come out in the end. You and I, paradoxically, fight like hell to overthrow capitalism, and then right at the end, your white hand stabs me in my black-ass back. Because history should tell me I can never trust a white man. Stupid motherfuckers, okay? Who gives a fuck about history, nigga? We're trying to make the future. Jesus Christ. I really get confused about some socialists who claim to be scientific, who claim to be anti-religious, yet and still they make arguments basically on the same premise as religious people. People who are against God always will go to hell. That's what the book says. Nigga, shut the fuck up. All right? Anyway. All right. If Farrakhan joined, it's possible. I don't know exactly what you mean by if Farrakhan joins is possible. Scrafty No One says anarchists right now tend toward reactionary behavior. If they are genuinely compassionate towards socialism, it's possible they could help. I'm worried that anarchists are incapable of solidarity. I agree to some degree. Listen, I'm still new to real leftist activism in the street, but all the anarchists that I've met in real life have been the most radical. I actually think, when it comes to direct action, anarchists are the ones who are going to be on the front lines first and foremost. You know what I'm saying? Because anarchists don't give a fuck. They're down for, breaking into military bases, disrupting, American military supplies and stuff like that. They're down to punch a police officer in the face. You know what I mean? They know how to breathe breathe in the air from mace and bear mace and shit like that. Some anarchists are down to ride. You know what I'm saying? Which I think is lacking in a lot of the ML space. But that's just for me looking from afar and also from my anecdotal interactions with anarchists. But I would like to know if you've had any interactions with anarchists. What are they like? What are they like? Tell me, what are they like? What are they like? What have your interactions with anarchists been? That is my question for the audience. Continuing here. We have already met with the name of the 1st Machine Gun Regiment in the events of the first month of the revolution, arriving shortly after the overturn, having marched from Oranienbaum to Petrograd upon its own initiative for the defense of the revolution. This regiment immediately ran into the opposition of the executive committee, which adopted a resolution to send the regiment back with thanks to Oranienbaum. The machine gunners flatly refused to leave the capital. Counter-revolutionists might attack the Soviet and restore the old regime. The executive committee surrendered, and several thousand machine gunners remained in Petrograd along with their machine guns. They took up their quarters in the House of the People and wondered what their further destiny was to be. They had among them, however, a good many Petrograd workers, and therefore, by no accident, the Bolshevik committee took upon itself the care of these machine gunners. Through this intercession, they were assured provisions from Peter and Paul Fortress. A friendship began. It soon became indestructible. On the 21st of June, the machine gunners introduced at a mass meeting a resolution. In the future, detachments shall be sent to the front only when the war has a revolutionary character. On the 2nd of July, the regiment called a farewell meeting in the House of the People for the last replacement company to depart for the front. The speakers were Lunacharsky and Trotsky. The authorities tried subsequently to attribute unusual significance to this accidental fact. Responses were made in the name of this regiment by the soldier Zilin and the old Bolshevik non-commissioned officer Lashevich. The mood was exalted. They denounced Kerensky and swore fealty to the revolution, but nobody made any practical proposal for the immediate future. However, during those last days, the city persisted in expecting something to happen. The July days were casting their shadow before them. Everywhere, Sukhanov remembers, in all corners, in the Soviet, in the Mariinsky Palace, in people's apartments, on the public squares and boulevards, in the barracks, in the factories, they were talking about some sort of manifestation to be expected. If not today, then tomorrow. Nobody knew exactly who was going to manifest what or where, but the city felt itself to be upon the verge of some sort of explosion. And the explosion did actually come. The stimulus was given from above, from the ruling circles. So, it's July in Moscow, in Russia, and believe it or not, Russia can get hot. I've had students, because I'm an English teacher, from Russia, and some of them have told me, it reaches like 35 degrees Celsius, in summer, in the city. You know what I'm saying? In Russia. So, yeah, it's hot. It's July. People have been dealing with this, flip-floppy government for the past few years. And now, since the February Revolution, people have been really on edge, asking the government for concessions, asking the government to change, asking for real revolutionary transformation of the society, and the bourgeois government has just been resisting. And, as Trotsky has mentioned before, even the revolutionary government, made up of Mensheviks and some Bolsheviks, are resisting the cause of the people for revolutionary change. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's just hot as hell in Moscow at this time that Trotsky is describing. People are frustrated, and all they can think about is what people think about in America when it's summer. Who are we going to kill? Who are we going to kill? If you don't know, oh yes, paradoxically says this was St. Petersburg, not Moscow. Same thing, but I'm also mentioning the Petrograd Soviet, and Petrograd, I believe, is another city as well. But anyway, the point I was trying to make is the same way in America. The shootings go up during summer and also during holidays like 4th of July. So a bunch of bodies are going to drop on 4th of July. Just check the news for it. And yeah, so it's possibly the same thing that's happening there. Okay? All right. Shout out to Scrafty No One. He says, I've met too many anarchists recently that are too anarchic. Any anarchist I come across that seems genuinely radical, I have pretty great conversations with. They're comparable to the punk movement, the Ramones, Sex Pistols, the punks that would wear Nazi logos because it was contrarian. Those anarchist contrarians will remain contrarian to anything a majority can agree on. They would turn to fascism to quicker than accepting an imperfect revolution. That's kind of a good point. I do believe that some of our personality types, as well as our material conditions, attract us to some ideologies. I do believe a lot of the people that are on the far right, are on the far right because of their material conditions. They're poor, they're out of work, or they're underemployed, even if they do have jobs, etc. But their personality types, along with the propaganda they've been fed, sort of allows them to identify more with far right-wing movements. So, for example, if you're a person who's always been bullied on, or you have a Napoleon complex, I do think there are more avenues for you to address that issue on the right. You know what I mean? Because people on the left are not going to be really trying to aggrandize you, to make you feel like you're bigger than what you are, to tell you that you're special just because of some immutable trait like your skin color or your lineage or race, etc., your gender. You know what I mean? People on the left are more about thinking like as a community basis. How can we as a group of people come together to make society better, rather than just telling a few small group of people that they're special, they're unique. So yeah, I do think some personality types might tend towards anarchism because of something. Okay? Petrograd is the Russian name for St. Petersburg. Oh, okay. All right. Well, we didn't know that. I thought I looked it up on the map, and Petrograd and Petersburg were in different places. But either way, we're still jumping forward in the story here. So, on the same day when Trotsky and Lunacharsky were speaking to the machine gun men about the bankruptcy of the coalition, 4 cadet ministers exploded the coalition by withdrawing from the government. They chose as pretext an agreement that their compromisist colleagues had concluded with the Ukraine, an agreement unacceptable to their imperial ambitions. The real cause of this demonstrative break lay in the fact that the compromisers had been dilatory about bridling the masses. The moment chosen was suggested by the collapse of the offensive, not yet officially acknowledged, but no longer a matter of doubt to the well-informed. These liberals considered it expedient to leave their left allies face to face with defeat and with the Bolsheviks. The rumor of the resignation of the cadets immediately spread through the capital and generalized all the existing conflicts politically in one slogan, or rather one cry to heaven: let us have an end of this coalition rigmarole. The soldiers and workers considered that all other questions, that of wages, of the price of bread, and of whether it is necessary to die at the front for nobody knows what, depended upon the question who was to rule the country in the future, the bourgeois or their own Soviet. In these expectations, there was a certain element of illusion, insofar at least as the masses hoped, with a change of power, to achieve an immediate solution of all sore problems. But in the last analysis, they were right. The questions of power determined the direction of the revolution as a whole, and that means that it decided the fates of everyone in particular. To imagine that the cadets may not have foreseen the effect of this act of open sabotage of the Soviet would be decidedly to underestimate Milikov. The leader of liberalism was obviously trying to drag the compromisers into a difficult situation from which they could make a way out only with bayonets. In those days, Milikov firmly believed that the solution could be saved with a bold bloodletting. On the morning of July 3rd, several thousand machine gunners, after breaking up a meeting of the company and regimental committees of their regiment, elected a chairman of their own and demanded immediate consideration of the question of an armed manifestation. The meeting was a storm from the first moment. The problem of the front intercrossed with the crisis in the government. The chairman of the meeting, a Bolshevik Golovin, tried to apply the brakes, proposing that they have a preliminary talk with other units and with the military organization. But every suggestion of delay set the soldiers on edge. There appeared at this meeting the anarchist Bleichman, a small but colorful figure on the background of 1917, with a very modest equipment of ideas but a certain feeling for the masses, sincere in his limited and ever-inflammable intelligence, his shirt open at the breast and curly hair flying out on all sides. Bleichmann was greeted at such meetings with a certain amount of semi-ironical sympathy. The workers, it is true, treated him somewhat coolly, a little impatiently, especially the metal workers. But the soldiers smiled delightedly at his speeches, nudging each other with their elbows and egging the orator on with pithy comments. They plainly liked his eccentric looks, his unreasoning decisiveness, and his Jewish American accent sharp as vinegar. By the end of June, Bleichmann was swimming in all these impromptu meetings like a fish in a river. His opinion he had always with him. It is necessary to come out with arms in our hands. Organization, the street will organize us. The task, to overthrow the Provisional Government just as it overthrew the Tsar, although no party was then demanding it. These speeches perfectly met the feelings of the machine gunners at that moment, and not theirs alone. Many of the Bolsheviks did not conceal their satisfaction when the lower ranks pressed forward against their official admonition. The progressive workers remembered that in February, their leaders had been ready to beat a retreat just on the eve of the victory. That in March, the 8-hour day had been won by action from below. That in April, Milikov had been thrown out by regiments who went into the street on their own initiative. A recollection of these facts augmented the tense and impatient mood of the masses. All right. Shout out to Scrafty, number 1. He says, total revolutionary zeal. Absolutely. The military organization of the Bolsheviks, being promptly informed that a meeting of the machine gunners was at the boiling point, sent over one agitator after another. Soon came Nevsky himself, the leader of the military organization, a man respected by the soldiers. They seemed to listen to him, but the mood of that endless meeting changed with its ingredients. It was an immense surprise to us, relates Podolsky, another leader of the military organization, when at 7 o'clock in the evening a horseman galloped up to inform us that the machine gunners had again resolved to come out. In place of the old regimental committee, they had elected a provisional revolutionary committee consisting of 2 men from each company under the presidency of Ensign Samashko. Specially appointed delegates were already making the rounds of the shops and regiments with an appeal for support. The machine gunners had not forgotten either to send their men to Kronstadt. In this way, one step below the official organizations and partly under their protection, new temporary relations were established between the more restive regiments and the factories. The masses had no intention of breaking with the Soviet. On the contrary, they wanted the Soviet to seize the power. Still less did the masses intend to break with the Bolshevik Party. But they did feel that the party was irresolute. They wanted to get their shoulder under it, shake a fist at the executive committee, give the Bolsheviks a little shove. Thus, impromptu systems of representation were created. New knots were tied. New centers of activity formed, not permanently, but for the given situation. Changes in circumstance and mood were taking place so fast and sharply that even such extremely flexible organizations as the Soviets inevitably lagged behind, and the masses were compelled at every new turn to create auxiliary organs for the demands of the movement or the demands of the moment. In the course of these improvisations, accidental and not always reliable elements would often spring into prominence. The anarchists poured oil on the fire, but so did some of the new and impatient Bolsheviks. Provocateurs also undoubtedly mixed in, perhaps also German agents, but surest of all, the agents of the 100% Russian secret police. How can one analyze the complicated web of a mass movement into its separate threads? The general character of the event emerges at least with complete clarity. Petrograd was feeling its strength, was strengthening at the leash, not glancing round at either the province or the front. And even the Bolshevik Party was no longer able to hold it back. Only experience could teach them. So what I'm getting from Trotsky right here is, once again, the people are moving faster than the party ever could. I know some people like to assume or think that the Russian Revolution was a top-down sort of movement where a bunch of intellectuals just misled or guided the people, whatever way you like to think about it, into overthrowing the Tsar, overthrowing the bourgeois, and just creating this, worker state. But really, it was the people pressing, continuing to press, to the point that they were even agitated with the Bolsheviks, as Trotsky says, that they wanted revolution now. And the organizations weren't with it at the time. They definitely didn't like the liberals, and they were frustrated with the leftists. Does that not sound like what we are dealing with now? But I would like to ask you, what do you think? Do you think we're living in a moment right now where it's like that? Workers are moving to the left economically and no parties? Definitely not the established bourgeois parties, but even the revolutionary parties are not even caught up to what the people want? Or do you think it's the reverse, where the parties, the leaders of the parties, the intellectuals inside of them, etc., they're ahead of the people? What do you think in the comment section? Do you think our left-wing organizations are behind the curve, or do you think they're actually too far ahead of the curve? Because what Trotsky is saying here is that they were actually behind the curve. So Jared, some of these names. Jared says, have you read any Dostoevsky? I've read Crime and Punishment many years ago, but we're not here to talk about that. I'm not here to talk about that. God damn, man. What do you think about my fucking question? How about that? How about that? Answer that. Don't ask me about fucking Dostoevsky. Answer my fucking question. Do you think our leftist organizations are behind the times, or do you think they're actually on time? All right? Anyway, in calling the factories and regiments into the street, the delegates of the machine gunners did not forget to add that the manifestation was to be armed. Yes, and how could it be otherwise? You wouldn't present yourself unarmed to the blows of an enemy. Moreover, and this perhaps was the chief thing, we must show our force, and a soldier without weapons is not a force. Upon this point, all the regiments and all the factories were of one mind. If we do go out, we must go with plenty of lead. The machine gunners lost no time, having started a big job. They intended to push it through as fast as possible. The reports of a court of inquiry subsequently characterized the activities of Ensign Samashko, one of the principal leaders of the regiment, in these words. He demanded automobiles from the factories, armed them with machine guns, sent them to the Tauride Palace and other points, designating the route, personally led out his regiment from the barracks into the town, rode out to the reserve battalion of the Moscow regiment to persuade it to come out, in which he was successful, promised the soldiers of the machine gun regiment support from the regiments of the military organization, kept in continual touch with the organization, quartered in the house of Kashenskaya, and with the leader of the Bolsheviks, Lenin, dispatched sentries for the protection of the military organization. The reference to Lenin here is inserted only to fill out the picture. Lenin was not in Petrograd either on that day or the days preceding. Since the 29th of June, he had been ill in a bungalow in Finland. But for the rest, the compressed language of the military court official conveys not at all badly the feverish, in the yard of the barracks, a no less feverish work was going on. But for the rest, the compressed language of the military court official conveys not at all badly the feverish preparations of the machine gunners. In the yard of the barracks, a no less feverish work was going on. They were giving out rifles to the soldiers who did not possess them, giving bombs to some, installing 3 machine guns with operators on each motor truck supplied by the factories. The regiment was to go into the street in full military array. Okay? Continuing here. All right. Okay, Scrafty just wanted to send our man out of here. Okay. He was timed out for a minute. Okay. Anyway, going to Scrafty, he says, I think people are looking for something, anything that could lead us towards social revolution. Leftist organizations have not kept up. That's why so many are led astray into parties like the ACP. That's a very good point. Yes, the ACP is very revisionist. And there's actually a good video on YouTube, I forgot who made it, who broke down the history of the ACP and how it's tied to this guy named LaRouche. I think his name is Jared LaRouche, who basically started to lead a type of Marxist cult of personality. He was an American guy, I believe. And that is like sort of the roots of the ACP. So yeah, it's a very strange organization and definitely a good example you brought up, Scrafty. So we are discussing the text and how it relates to today's conditions. Unless you can relate crime and punishment to the current text, it is unrelated. Jay Ryder says, for socialism is not Jay Ryder says, for socialism is not merely the labor question. It is before all things the atheistic question. The question of the form taken by atheism today. The question of the Tower of Babel built without God. Okay, this is just bourgeois nonsense that just wants to equate socialism or Marxism in general with somehow being religious, which fundamentally it is not. There's no sort of faith that it takes to be a Marxist or be a socialist. It's not a belief structure. It's a a logical standpoint that you come to after analyzing society. So I'm gonna continue here. All right, Gloria Watkins says, left can't go, little right, groceries, living. They have many criminals that kill businesses. People slap left out of third to, what the, rough on Americans? I have no idea. This is the problem. When you say you actually want to hear the voices of the working class, that actually might be what it is. And that's a major problem too. We have to get working class translators. Okay. Okay, Scrafty says, I'm a little confused with this last message. Me too, man. You know, we want the proletariat to have a voice, but we also need to raise the literacy. You know what I'm saying? Because in Cuba, this would never happen. In Cuba, almost 99% of the population is literate. They can read and write, probably at a very high and advanced level, in their native language of Spanish. In America, this is what we get. Gloria Watkins. And Gloria, we're going to fight for you to have health care. We're going to fight for you to have a social safety net. We're going to fight for you to have, the means of production in your name and not just go to work for some billionaire. But goddamn, Gloria, we have a lot of work to do. I know a lot of us leftists like to think, when we seize power in America, it's going to be heaven on earth because we're already the richest country on earth. I don't think people realize we're going to have to start from almost scratch because of how destroyed the minds of the Americans have been. You know what I'm saying? Every socialist government had to raise literacy rates, and that will be no different in America. You know what I'm saying? Because I believe right now, 87% of Americans are literate, and some say it's going down every single year. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's crazy. And to make it even crazier, I knew people in my own life who couldn't read. Facts. Nobody wants to talk about that. I know people right now in my life that can't read. Granted, the person I'm talking about is not from America. It's somebody who's an in-law of mine. But there are people in families right now who cannot read. You know what I'm saying? It's really sad. Really sad. So, Scrafty number 1 says, have you seen that video interviewing Cubans about the push on the blockade? They all know what the hell they're talking about. Absolutely. The average Cuban is miles ahead when it comes to understanding geopolitics, society, and understanding what socialism is and what capitalism is. I bet a poor Cuban could give a better definition of capitalism than a very intelligent, what we consider intelligent American, to give a definition of socialism. Like the average American could not define socialism or communism, and I'm pretty sure the average Cuban could tell you very well what capitalism is. So explain that. We have a lot of work to do. Oh man, we have a lot of work to do. Anyway, and just about the same thing was going on in the factories. Delegates would arrive from the machine gunners or from a neighboring factory and summon the workers into the street. It would seem as though they had been waiting for the delegates. Work would stop instantly. A worker of the Renaud factory tells this story. After dinner, a number of machine gun men came running with the request that we give them some motor trucks. In spite of the protest of our group, the Bolsheviks, we had to give up the cars. They promptly loaded the trucks with Maxims, machine guns, and drove down the Nevsky. At this point, we could no longer restrain our workers. They all, just as they were in overalls, rushed straight outdoors from the benches. The protests of the factory Bolsheviks were not always, we may assume, very insistent. The longest struggle took place at the Putilov factory. At about 2 in the afternoon, a rumor went around that a delegation had come from the machine gun unit and was calling a meeting. About 10,000 men assembled. To shouts of encouragement, the machine gunners told how they had received an order to go to the front on the 4th of July, but they had decided to go not to the German front against the German proletariat, but against their own capitalist ministers. Feeling ran high. Come on, let's get moving, cried the workers. The secretary of the factory committee, a Bolshevik, objected, suggesting that they ask instructions from the party. Protests from all sides. Down with it. Again, you want to postpone things. We can't live that way any longer. Toward 6 o'clock came representatives from the executive committee, but they succeeded still less with the workers. The meeting continued, the everlasting, nervous, obstinate meeting of innumerable masses seeking a way out and unwilling to be told that there is none. It was proposed that they send a delegation to the executive committee. Still another delay, but as before, the meeting did not disperse. About this time, a group of workers and soldiers brought news that the Viborg side was already on its way to the Tarai Palace. To hold them back longer was impossible. They decided to go. A Putilov worker, Efimov, ran to the district committee of the party to ask, "What shall we do?" The answer he got was, "We will not join the manifestation, but we can't leave the workers to their fate. We must go along with them." At that moment appeared a member of the committee, Chuden, with the word that the workers were going out in all the districts, and that it was up to the party men to maintain order. In this way, the Bolsheviks were caught up by the movement and dragged into it, looking around the while for some justification for an action which flatly contravened the official decision of the party. By 7 o'clock, the industrial life of the capital was at a complete standstill. Factory after factory came out, lined up and armed its detachment of the Red Guard. Amid an innumerable mass of workers, relates the Viborg worker Metalev, hundreds of young Red Guards were working away, loading their rifles. Others were piling cartridges into the cartridge chambers, tightening up their belts, tying up their knapsacks or cartridge boxes, adjusting their bayonets. And the workers without arms were helping the Red Guards get ready. Sampon-Nevsky Prospect, the chief artery of the Viborg side, was packed full of people. To the right and left of it stood solid columns of workers. In the middle of the prospect marched the machine gun regiment, the spinal column of the procession. At the head of each company went an automobile truck with its Maxims. After the machine gun regiment came the workers. Covering the manifestation as a rear guard came detachments of the Moscow regiment. Over every detachment streamed a banner, "All power to the Soviets." The funeral procession in March and the 1st of May demonstration were probably more numerous, but the July procession was incomparably more eager, more threatening, and more homogeneous in its composition. Under the red banners marched only workers and soldiers, writes one of the participants. The cockades of the officials, the shiny buttons of students, the hats of lady sympathizers were not to be seen. All that belonged to 4 months ago, to February. In today's movement, there was none of that. Today, only the common slaves of capital were marching. Damn! As before, automobiles flew through the streets in all directions, full of armed workers and soldiers, delegates, agitators, reconnaisseurs, telephone men, and detachments for calling out workers and regiments. They all had their bayonets advanced. The bristling motor trucks completed a picture of the February days, electrifying some, terrorizing others. The cadet Nabokov writes, the same insane, dumb, beast-like faces which we all remember from the February days. That is, the days of that very revolution which the liberals had officially pronounced glorious and bloodless. By 9 o'clock, 7 regiments were already moving toward the Tarai Palace. They were joined on the way by columns from the factories and by new military detachments. The movement of the machine gun regiment developed a power of contagion. The July days had begun. You know, there's some leftists, there's some communists that might judge me because I still believe in God. Particularly, I'm a Muslim. But I do believe in the words of our prophet Isa, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Isa said, the first shall be last, and the last shall be first. The first shall be last, and the last shall be first. And think about this scene that Trotsky is painting here. Back in February, these workers were disorganized. They were looked at as like the beast of burden of the nation, the slaves to capital, the guys who went to work every day, you know, with their head down and their faces dirty, their fingers ruddy for 14-hour shifts, working in mines, in factories, and all types of wicked shit. And now, only a few months later, how many months that is from February to July, these guys are organized, militant, lined up in rows and regiments and columns, armed to the teeth, ready to take over their society, ready to seize the means of production in their hands. And now they're resolute, they're upright, they're strong men. You get what I'm saying? And that's what revolution does. That's what revolution does. That's what revolution zeal, as Scrafty number 1 said in the chat. That's what that does to you. You know what I mean? It puts that spine in your back. You know what I mean? It makes you stand up right. And that's what's so inspiring here about what happened in Russia. Because it might seem impossible now. It might seem impossible now in America how the working class is divided, poor, ignorant, stupid, somewhat lazy under capitalism, because capitalism creates these conditions for us to be in. But in a short amount of time, us same working mass, us who are slaves to capital and the bourgeoisie, can become something else. We can transform. That is revolutionary, not only on the outside, but also on the inside as well. And I find that so inspiring. The picture he's painting here. All right? I'm going to put you in timeout. Okay? All right? That brick says, that's funny. He says, are you a Mormon? That's funny. I am not a Mormon. No. So yeah, that's funny. That's funny. Are you a Mormon? Anyway, that's funny. Out of all the things, Marxist Mormons, I bet there's one Marxist Mormon. I gotta check on the CPUSA in Utah. I wonder what the CPUSA chapter in Utah looks like. Technically, the club. Wonder what the Salt Lake City Club looks like. They got Marxist Mormons. They got no coffee drinking, special underwear wearing Marxists. You know what I mean? That'd be hilarious. There has to be one Marxist Mormon. We got to find the Marxist Mormon. I bet his name is Kevin, too. I bet his name is Kevin. He has a 2-car garage. He still goes to the church every Sunday. He has never had a drink of coffee or alcohol. But by God, does he hate fucking, like, I don't know, diamond miners in South Africa. Like, he just has an axe to grind. Like, he saw a documentary back in, like, 1997 about exploitative mining practices in South Africa, and he's never gotten over it. He's never gotten over it. Kevin in Salt Lake City has an axe to grind against capitalism because he was radicalized by one documentary he saw in 1997. Scrafty number 1 says they will be so useful. They could just go anywhere. Yes, because those are some white people, boy. In Utah, they are white. Those are the. I know the white supremacists are like, why can't we have our own homeland? There already is a white supremacist homeland. It's called Utah. Utah and Idaho. You know what I'm saying? If they want to have a state, the whites can have their own state. It's called Utah. It's called Idaho, man. Anyway, I'm sorry. By the way, guys, this is a kind of a long chapter. This is a long chapter. We're on page 493, and the book, or chapter 23, doesn't end until about page 512. So we still have about, 20 more pages to go. So I don't want to hold anybody up. I'm not making y'all stay. If you ever get tired, because we do marathon readings here, you know, you could always dip out. Letting you know. All right? I've been going so hard. I need a water break. Yeah, we're more than an hour and a half in. I haven't had a drink of water. That's crazy. All right. Anyway. Meetings were held on the march. Shots rang out. According to a worker, Korotkov, they dragged out a cellar on the Litany, a machine gun, and an officer whom they killed on the spot. Damn. They dragged out of a cellar on the Litany a machine gun and an officer whom they killed on the spot. These motherfuckers were militant, man. They were wilding. All conceivable rumors ran ahead of the demonstration. Fears rayed out from all its sides, like beams of light. What imaginable thing was not reported over the telephones from the frightened central districts? It was said that about 8 o'clock in the evening, an armed automobile dashed up to the Warsaw station seeking Kerensky, who had left the very day for the front, intending to arrest him. But that train had gone and arrest did not occur. That episode was subsequently repeated more than once as proving a conspiracy. Just who was in the automobile and who discovered its mysterious intentions, has nevertheless remained unknown. On that evening, automobiles with armed men were careering in all directions, doubtless, therefore, in the vicinity of the Warsaw station. Strong words to be heard about Kerensky in many places. This evidently served as a basis for the myth, if it was not indeed simply manufactured out of a whole cloth. All right. Shout out to Scrafty number 1. He says, I'm strong and lumpen prole as fuck. I got all the time in the world. Okay, man. Shout out to Scrafty number 1, man. I like this guy, man. I hope he sticks around more for all of our readings, all the commentary we do. I appreciate that, Scrafty, man. You stuck it out with me. At the beginning, we were raided by white supremacists and Nazis. Now it's sort of calmed down. If this is your first live stream, this is sort of like how it goes. The first 15 minutes, possibly sometimes even to an hour, we're just getting attacks from fascists and white supremacists and trolls up in the chat. And then they sort of taper off. Then there's just like some people that are actually here to engage with what I'm talking about still remaining. And then after some time, those people dwindle out too. I mean, that's just how it is. That's life. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I do this reading, though, for posterity, to educate myself. And one chapter a day keeps the brain from melting away. So that's all I'm doing. I'm tackling one of Trotsky's longest books and possibly one of the most important books for us Marxists to read. I'm tackling it one chapter at a time. And technically, we're about halfway through with the book. We're almost halfway through with the book, technically, because I think there's like 42 odd chapters or so. Anyway, so continuing here. By the way, I have a question, one more question, and this is now a question where y'all can talk about books. What do you think are some Marxist reading essentials? Let's say you've already read the manifesto. You've read the manifesto, but you haven't read like the German ideology or anything like that. What do you think are Marxist essentials? And they don't even have to be written by Marx, you know? So tell me what you think, okay? What are some Marxist essential texts? No number, no cap. Anyway, Izvestia sketched the following outline of the events of July 3rd. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, there came out armed the first machine gun. A part of the Moscow, a part of the Grenadier, and a part of the Pavlovsky regiments. They were joined by crowds of workers. By 8 o'clock in the evening, separate parts of regiments began to pour toward the palace of Kashenskaya, armed to the teeth and with red banners and placards demanding the transfer of power to the Soviets. Speeches were made from the balcony. At 10:30, a meeting was held on the square in front of the Tarai Palace. The troops elected a deputation to the All-Russian Central Executive Committee, which presented in their name the following demands. Removal of the 10 bourgeois ministers, all power to the Soviets, cessation of the offensive, confiscation of the printing plants of the bourgeois press, the land to be state property, state control of production, aside from certain prunings, parts of regiments instead of regiments, crowds of workers instead of entire factories. You may say that the official report of Setzarelli and Dan does not distort the general picture of what happened. In particular, it correctly notes the two focal points of the demonstration, the private residence of Kashenskaya and the Tarai Palace. Both spiritually and physically, the movement revolved around those two antagonistic centers. It came to the house of Kashenskaya for instructions, leadership, inspirational speeches. To the Tarai Palace, it came to present demands and even to threaten a little with its power. All right. So, Scrafty number 1 says Black Shirts and Reds by Michael Parenti. That's a good one. I haven't read any Michael Parenti, but I've listened to a lot of Michael Parenti speeches. Very good. Rest in peace, Michael Parenti, for real. I recommend that one to everyone first. That's very good because Parenti was an intellectual who was very good at communicating socialist ideas to the public. Michael Parenti will be greatly missed. Michael Parenti will be greatly missed. We've lost actually so many people that are actually very, very important for the movement. You know, Asada died last year. Michael Parenti died this year. You know what I'm saying? Didn't Hobsbawm die? I think Hobsbawm died this year. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, there's a lot of actually very important socialist and Marxist writers and thinkers that are passing away. You know, the 20th century is behind us. It's the 21st century. So now we need some 21st century intellectuals and thinkers. You know what I'm saying? We gotta get Zizek out the paint. We gotta get Zizek out the paint. We gotta get other people, you know, in place and in power. You know what I'm saying? when it comes to the ears and eyes of communicating socialism. I think Richard Wolff still has a few more years on him. You know what I'm saying? So that's good to hear. But what do y'all think? Because I do think a new generation will follow, like Hassan. And I do think Hassan is pretty radical, but I do think there's still more for him to go. I think Hassan can become more radical and also more influential as well. So I do think there's a future. I do think there's a future for Hassan, to radicalize the next generation. But who else? Who else is on the horizon that's rising up to replace the Michael Parentis, the Asadas, the Hobsbombs, etc.? Richard Wolff is a lot of people's first exposure to Marxism. You know what I'm saying? But I was first exposed to Marxism through Huey P. Newton. You know what I'm saying? I think one of the most influential Marxist books that I ever read was the Huey P. Newton Reader. Not that long of a book. It was actually a collection of writings, not even all of Huey P. Newton's writings. And I had that book and I read it front to back. You know what I'm saying? And I really loved Huey P. Newton's vision of revolutionary intercommunalism. You know what I'm saying? I do think there is some merit in Huey P. Newton thought and his contributions to socialism. You get what I'm saying? So everybody enters this thing differently. You know, remember, I'm a bit older. I'm 35 years old. I don't know how old y'all are out there. You know what I'm saying? But I entered into socialism coming through the black radical tradition. Of course, Malcolm X, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, I digress. So, other books. Tell me, what are some other books or other important people? But I guess the question is, who do you think are going to be, the next generation of people that will radicalize, people to realize that, socialism is the only way, unless we want to live in a world of barbarism. I think it's possible some of these content creators who claim to be liberals might become more leftist, if not full-on socialist or communist, as things progressively get worse. You know what I'm saying? I could see, what's his name? Kyle Kalinske, just straight up being like, yeah, bro, Lenin was right. Lenin was right. I can see it. So Scrafty number 1 says Revolutionary Suicide was one of the first books I read. I think it was a bit too early to read it, so I need to revisit ASAP. We just read Revolutionary Suicide on live stream a few months ago. I started doing the vertical live streams with Revolutionary Suicide, so all those videos are on my channel. But it's a very easy book to read. Huey P. Newton is a very direct and blunt writer, so it's not difficult to revisit it. In fact, I think you could read it all in about a day or two. You know what I mean? If you really just pressed it. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, I digress. Let's continue here. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 2 delegates from the machine gunners came to an all-city conference of the Bolsheviks, sitting that day in the house of the Kashenskaya, with the information that their regiment had decided to come out. Nobody had expected this, and nobody wanted it. Trotsky declared, the regiments which have come out have acted in an uncomradely manner, not having invited the Central Committee of our party to consider the question of a manifestation. The Central Committee proposes to the conference, in the first place, to issue an appeal in order to hold back the masses. In the second, to prepare an address to the Executive Committee, urging them to take the power in their hands. It is impossible to talk of a manifestation at the moment unless we want a new revolution. Trotsky, an old worker Bolshevik who had certified his loyalty to the party with years at hard labor, famous subsequently as leader of the trade unions, was in general more inclined by character to restrain the masses from action that summoned them to it. But on this occasion he was merely carrying out the thought of Lenin. It is impossible to talk of a manifestation at this moment unless we want a new revolution. Even the attempt at a peaceful demonstration on June 10th had been denounced by the compromisers as a conspiracy. An overwhelming majority of the conference was at one with Trotsky. We must at all costs postpone the final conflict. The offensive at the front is holding the whole country at high tension. Its failure is inevitable, as also the determination of the government to throw all the responsibility for the defeat upon the Bolsheviks. We must give the compromisers time to ruin themselves completely. Volodarsky answered the machine gunners in the name of the conference to the effect that the regiment must submit to the decisions of the party. The machine gunners departed with the protest. At 4 o'clock, the Central Committee confirmed the decision of the conference. Its members dispersed to the districts and factories to restrain the masses from going out. Appeals to the same effect were sent to Pravda to be printed on the front page the following morning. Stalin was appointed to bring the decision to the attention of the joint session of the executive committees. There remains, therefore, no doubt whatever as to the intention of the Bolsheviks. Their Central Committee addressed an appeal to the workers and soldiers. Unknown persons are summoning you into the streets under arms, and that proves that the summons does not come from any one of the Soviet parties. Thus the Central Committees, both of the party and the Soviet, proposed, but the masses disposed. Fascinating. All right, so continuing here. At 8 o'clock in the evening, the machine gun regiment, and soon after it, the Moscow regiment, came up with the palace of Kashenskaya. Popular Bolsheviks, Nevsky, Lashevich, Podolsky, speaking from the balcony, tried to send the regiments home. They were answered from below, "Doloi, Doloi." Such cries the Bolsheviks' balcony had never yet heard from the soldiers. It was an alarming sign. Behind the regiments, the factories began to march up. All power to the Soviets. Down with the 10 minister capitalists. Those had been the banners of June 18th, but now they were hedged with bayonets. The demonstration had become a mighty fact. What was to be done? Could the Bolsheviks possibly stand aside? The members of the Petrograd Committee, together with the delegates to the conference and representatives from the regiments and factories, passed a resolution to reconsider the question, to end all fruitless attempts to restrain the masses and guide the developing movement in such a way that the governmental crisis may be decided in the interest of the people. With this goal, to appeal to the soldiers and workers to go peacefully to the Tauride Palace, elect delegates, through them present their demands to the Executive Committee. The members of the Central Committee who were present sanctioned this change of tactics. This new decision, announced from the balcony, was met with welcoming shouts and with singing of the Marseillaise. The movement had been legalized by the party. The machine gunners could heave a sigh of relief. A part of the regiment immediately went to Peter and Paul Fortress to influence its garrison, and in case of necessity protect from its blows the palace of Kashenskaya, which was separated from the fortress only by the narrow Karnofsky Canal. All right, I don't know who Colburn Thunderhammer Gaming, but yeah, Scrafty #1. Salute to Scrafty for making sure all white supremacists, all fascists get the block. They can go to the block party at the Gulag. Shout out to Scrafty holding it down. Anyway, the principal ranks of the demonstration moved out with the Nevsky, the artery of the bourgeoisie, bureaucracy, and officers, as though into a foreign country. From the sidewalks, windows, balconies, thousands of eyes looked out with no good wishes. Regiment pressed upon factory, factory upon regiment. Fresh masses arrived continually. All the banners in gold letters on red cried out with one voice, "All power to the Soviets." The procession brimmed the Nevsky and poured like a river at the flood to the Tauride Palace. The placards, "Down with the war," provoked the bitterest hostility from the officers. Among them many war invalids, waving their arms and straining their voices. Students, college girls, officials endeavored to persuade the soldier that German agents behind them are aiming to let Wilhelm's troops into Petrograd to strangle freedom. To these orators, their own conclusions seem irrefutable. They are deceived by spies, says the officials, pointing at the workers, and the workers' answer is a surly growl. Led astray by fanatics, say the more indulgent. Ignorant elements, others agree. But the workers have their own way of measuring things. They did not learn from German spies those ideals which have brought them into the streets today. The demonstrators impolitely push aside their importunate tutors and move forward. Let's repeat. The demonstrators impolitely push aside their importunate tutors and move forward. This drives the patriots of the Nevsky out of their hands. Shock groups, led for the most part by war cripples and cavaliers of St. George, fall upon individual sections of the demonstration, trying to snatch away the banners. Clashes occur here and there. The atmosphere grows hot. Shots ring out, one and then another. From a window, from the Anichkin Palace, the pavement answers with a volley in the air, aimed nowhere. In a short time, the whole street is in confusion. At about midnight, relates a worker from the Vulcan factory, as the Grenadier Regiment was passing through the Nevsky in the vicinity of the public library, somebody opened fire on them from somewhere, and the shooting continued several minutes. A panic followed. The workers began to scatter into the side streets. The soldiers lay down under fire. They had learned that in the war school, that midnight scene on the Nevsky, with Grenadier Guards lying down on the pavement, was a fantastic spectacle. Neither Pushkin nor Gogol, singers of the Nevsky, ever imagined it thus. Moreover, there was reality in this fantasia. Dead and wounded men stayed there on the pavement. So, yeah, Trotsky is saying that the workers wanted to continue to press for all power to be to the Soviets, saying that the people really were behind this movement. It wasn't really the Bolsheviks. They begrudgingly went along with the people who wanted to overthrow their system. So this is very inspiring for us. Let us never forget that the power is in the people's hands. Very, very inspiring stuff that we're reading right here. Once again, this is a long chapter. We still have a few more pages to go. Actually, I was wrong. It's not until 5:12. It's till 5:04. So we only have about, 5 more pages to read in the live stream. So if you want to stick it out with me, I'd be more than happy to chill with y'all and knock out these last few pages. I believe Trotsky is going to give a conclusion here to this chapter of the July days, when it was hot in the streets of Russia. The workers were agitated. They wanted to overthrow the system. And finally, they're getting some taste of real revolutionary praxis. Continuing. All right, let me check the horizontal stream, though, real quick. Let me make sure it's still going. All right. All right, yes. Both streams are still going. Right now, we're still rocking. Okay. So, the Tauride was living a life of its own in those days. In view of the resignation of the cadets, both executive committees, the workers, soldiers, and the peasants, had met in joint session to consider a discourse of Tsetserelli on how to pour out the coalition bath without the baby. The secret of this operation would undoubtedly have been discovered in the long run if the restless suburbs had not intervened. A telephone communication about the manifestation under preparation by the machine gun regiment produced frowns of anger and vexation on the faces of the leaders. Can it be that the soldiers and workers will not wait until our newspapers bring them salvation in the form of a resolution? Oblique glances were cast in the direction of the Bolsheviks. But for them, too, this time, the demonstration was a surprise. Kamenev and other representatives of the party, who happened to be present, even agreed at the end of the day's session to go out to the factories and barracks and attempt to restrain the masses from going out. This gesture was afterward interpreted by the compromisers as a military trick. The executive committee, as usual, hastily adopted a proclamation declaring any manifestation an act of treachery to the revolution. But even so, how were they going to deal with the governmental crisis? A way out was found. They would leave the mutilated cabinet as it was, postponing the whole question until the provincial members of the executive committee could be summoned. To drag things out, to gain time for your own vacillations, is not that the most ingenious of all political policies? All right? Scrafty number 1 says, I'm reminded of the Romanovs. They've been a commonly brought up point in discussions recently. How so? How so? Yeah, very interesting also how Trotsky doesn't really mention the Romanovs, even though we know what happened to the Romanovs when the Bolsheviks really took power, after October. But I would like, to know what they're up to, because last thing I remember is that Nicholas II's train was sort of intercepted and he was arrested, and I forgot where they placed him. He's somewhere in this story. Anyway, continuing here. Only in their struggle against the masses did the compromisers consider it unwise to lose time. The official apparatus was immediately set in motion to prepare arms against the insurrection, for so they named the demonstration from the very beginning. The leaders searched everywhere for armed forces to defend the government and the executive committee. Over the signature of Trotsky and other members of the Presidium, demands were sent to various military institutions to send to the Tarai Palace armored cars, 3-inch guns, and shells. At the same time, almost every regiment received orders to send armed detachments for the defense of the palace. But they did not stop there. Their bureau telegraphed an order that same day to the front, to the 5th Army, stationed nearest the capital, to send to Petrograd a cavalry division, a brigade of infantry and armored cars. The Menshevik Voitinsky, to whom was allotted the task of protecting the executive committee, let the whole thing out later in his retrospective survey. The entire day of July 3rd was spent in getting together troops to fortify the Tarai Palace. Our problem was to bring in at least a few companies. At one time, we had absolutely no forces. 6 men stood at the doors of the Tarai Palace without power to hold back the crowd. And again, on the first day of the demonstration, we had at our disposal only 100 men. We had no other forces. We sent out commissars to all the regiments with a request to give us soldiers to form a patrol. But each regiment looked to the next to see what it was going to do. We were compelled at whatever cost to put a stop to this outrage, and we summoned troops from the front. It would be difficult, even with malice aforethought, to devise a more vicious satire upon the compromisers. Hundreds of thousands of demonstrators were demanding the transfer of power to the Soviets. Trotsky, standing at the head of the Soviet system, and thus the logical candidate for premier, was hunting for armed forces to employ against the demonstrators. This colossal movement in favor of power to the democracy was denounced by the democratic leaders as an attack upon the democracy by an armed gang. Okay, go into the comments. Scrafty number 1 says, the deaths of the Romanovs have been used against Marxists. People have said it was proof that Marxists are evil. I think it's good to bring up because it proves that decisions were being made by Reds. The Red Army made that decision on the spot, though Lenin sent a letter planning to simply remove them from office. He got a letter back that they were already dead. It was undeniable that their legacy was political power. Yeah, I don't really care if people want to say that Marxists are evil, communists are killers, because they killed the king. Nobody says the same thing about liberals. Literally, the heart of liberalism goes back to the wars in England where they ended up literally beheading the king. Now, is anybody going to say liberalism is inherently evil or bad? Even though probably more blood has been on the hands of liberals than there have been on us leftists. So, yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. If somebody brings that up, that's a non-argument. That's a non-fucking argument. Okay? If somebody says communists are bad because look what they did to the Romanov family. They killed an entire family of, basically overlords of their country who had no problem sending hundreds of thousands of Russian men to die in a ceaseless war, knowing that they were losing the war. If somebody said that's a non-fucking argument. Because everybody, at every society at some point killed their king. Okay? Everybody ran up in the castle every now and then and beheaded the king. That's not a big deal. And the king's family as well. Somebody's going to tell me that liberalism is bad because in the French Republic they guillotined Marie Antoinette when she was just riding along. She wasn't even powerful. If I remember right, Marie Antoinette was just famous for being famous, who just so happened to be in the fucking royal family, and she got her shit knocked off. So that's a non-argument. All right. Yeah, and Scrafty number 1 says, but it's a good and easy point to counter the shit because the Romanovs are so pointedly fucked up. Absolutely. It's a non-fucking argument. People are just grasping for straws if they get to that point where they say, well, the Bolsheviks killed an entire family. And they have nothing to say about how the Romanovs slaughtered hundreds of thousands of their own people in a ceaseless war that they knew they were losing. I see no problem. I see no problem. And it's a non-fucking argument. That's so stupid. I'm going to continue here. Yeah. In the Tarai Palace, at that same time, the workers' section of the Soviet was meeting after a long intermission. In the course of the last 2 months, this section had so far changed its composition as a result of by-elections in the factories that the executive committee had well-grounded fears of a predominance of Bolsheviks. The artificially delayed meeting of the section, finally called a few days before by the compromisers themselves, accidentally coincided with the armed demonstration. In this, the newspaper saw the hand of the Bolsheviks. Zinoviev, in a speech to the section, convincingly developed the thought that the compromisers, being allies of the bourgeoisie, were unable and unwilling to struggle against the counter-revolution, since that word meant to them only individual manifestations of Black Hundred hooliganism. It did not mean what it was, a political union of the possessing classes for the purpose of strangling the Soviets as centers of the resistance of the toiling masses. His speech hit the mark. The Mensheviks, finding themselves for the first time in a minority on Soviet soil, proposed that no decision should be arrived at, and that they should disperse to the districts to preserve order. But it was already too late. The news that armed workers and machine gunners were approaching the Tauride Palace produced a mighty excitement in the hall. Kamenev ascended the tribune. We did not summon the manifestation, he said. The popular masses themselves came into the street. But once the masses have come out, our place is among them. Our present task is to give the movement an organized character. Kamenev concluded with a proposal that they elect a commission of 25 men for the leadership of the movement. Trotsky seconded the motion. Chedzi feared a Bolshevik commission and vainly insisted that the question be turned over to the executive committee. The debate became fiercer. Convinced finally that altogether they constituted only a third of the assembly, the Mensheviks and social revolutionaries left the hall. This was becoming a favorite tactic with the Democrats. They began to boycott the Soviets from the moment they lost the majority there. A resolution summoning the executive committee to take the power was adopted in the absence of the opposition by 276 votes. Elections were immediately held for the 15 members of the commission. 10 places were left for the minority, and these 10 would remain unoccupied. This fact of the election of a Bolshevik commission signified both to friends and enemies that the workers' section of the Petrograd Soviet would henceforth become a Bolshevik base, a vast step forward. In April, the influence of the Bolsheviks had extended to approximately a third of the Petrograd workers. In the Soviet of those days, they occupied a wholly insignificant sector. Now, at the beginning of July, the Bolsheviks were sending to the workers' section about 2/3 of its members. That meant that among the masses, their influence had become decisive. All right, going to the comments here. Kirkham Down Stalin is in the horizontal live stream scene. He says, facial hair got my man looking like Lenin. You know, I just try to be Mela Lenin. No? Is that a good one? Is that a good one or is that corny? Do I get a tomato or do I get an applause for that? Mela Lenin, get it? Like melanin, Mela Lenin? No. Okay, boo, tomato. Anyway, Kirkham Down Stalin says, they tried to make a movie of Romanov propaganda. They were not a good family. It feels exactly like the Israeli shit today. They cooked this fucking the Western narrative. Yeah, I mean, if somebody wasn't there a movie, like a Disney movie back in the day called Anastasia? Okay. Wasn't there a Disney movie back in the day called like Anastasia? And in the film, it's about, one of the Russian princesses actually lived the communists like slaughtering the whole Romanov family. And don't they in the film try to make the communists look bad or something like that for making them seem like they're so bad for slaughtering a family? Yeah, the Romanovs were not a good family. They were damn near on some like Epstein shit. I mean, they had this big dick Russian priest called Rasputin laying up in the house telling everybody to wash his feet and kiss his hands, and the king had no idea that he was getting cucked out by this big dick Russian from the Far East who claimed to be the resurrection of Jesus. Okay? Scrafty number 1 says, Anastasia pisses me off. I need to watch that movie again. I saw all the Disney movies as a kid. Literally, that was my addiction. So like Mulan, Pocahontas, Sleeping Beauty, all of them, man. And Anastasia is one of them. But I feel like people have forgot about Anastasia the movie. I feel like we've forgotten about that. Should we watch that again? Should Acti and I review Anastasia the movie? Because I feel like it might be funny as hell watching it in 2026 eyes. You know what I'm saying? Objectively funny that he was that big a freak. Yeah, Rasputin is a nasty boy. So yeah, the Romanovs got to go. Just the fact that they had a big dick Russian man that never showered and slept with the king's wife and had the king, like, basically sitting in the cup chair in the palace. Yeah, the Romanovs are not good. They got to go. They had to go. But should we review Anastasia? Does anybody remember that movie, Anastasia? Let me know, man. Let me know. Anyway, through the streets leading to the Tauride Palace, there is flowing a steady column of working men and women and soldiers, with banners, songs, and bands playing. The light artillery comes along, its commander reporting amid rapture that all the batteries of the division are at one with the workers. The thoroughfares and square near the Tauride are filled with people. All are trying to crowd in around the tribune at the chief entrance to the palace. Chelsea comes out to the demonstrators with the gloomy look of a man who has been unnecessarily torn from his work. The popular Soviet president is met with an unfriendly silence. In a tired and hoarse voice, Chelsea repeats those commonplaces which have long puckered his mouth. Voitinsky, who comes out to help him, is no better received. Trotsky, however, according to the accounts of Milikov, having announced that the moment was now come when the power should go over to the Soviets, was met with loud applause. This sentence of Milikov's is purposely ambiguous. None of the Bolsheviks declared that the moment was come. A machinist from the small Duflon factory on the Petrograd side said later about that meeting under the wall of the Tauride Palace, "I remember the speech of Trotsky, who said that it was not yet time to seize the power in our hands." The machinist reports the essence of the speech more correctly than the professor of history. From the lips of the Bolshevik orators, the demonstrators learned of the victory just won in the workers' section, and that fact gave them almost as palpable a satisfaction as would an entrance upon the epic of Soviet power. All right? So, Scrafty number 1 says, Imperial Palace drama makes me laugh, verily. Wasn't there a show about, like, Imperial, I forgot the name. There was, like, an HBO show about, like, Imperial, courtroom, ballroom drama. But if anything, Scrafty number 1, if you like that, you'll like some Turkish shows. Because that's all Turkish shows are, especially those ones based in the Ottoman Empire. It's just all palace intrigue and palace coups. So you might like that type of stuff. I think also Concave. Scrafty, have you seen the film Concave? The one about the Pope? Because I think that might be also your alley. And that's a movie Acting and I have been meaning to review for a long time. All right? All right, shout out to Scrafty. He says he's got to go. Welcome our new commissar, Scrafty number 1. He's a cool guy. We got 2 commissars right now, Kirkham Down Stalin and Scrafty number 1 up in the live stream. Shout out to both of them, holding it down. And yeah, let's continue here. The joint session of the executive committee met again a little before midnight. Just then, the grenadiers were lying down on the Nevsky. On a motion from Dan, it was resolved that only those could remain at the meetings that would bind themselves in advance to defend and carry out its decisions. This was a new note from a workers' and soldiers' parliament, which was what the Mensheviks had declared the Soviet to be. They were trying to convert it into an administrative organ of the compromised majority. After they have become a minority, and this is only 2 months away, the compromisers will passionately defend the principle of democracy in the Soviet. Today, however, as indeed at all decisive moments in social life, democracy is held in reserve. A number of Mezharatstis left the hall with a protest. The Bolsheviks were not there. They were in the palace of the Kashenskaya, getting ready for tomorrow. During the further course of the meeting, the Mezharatsty and the Bolsheviks appeared in the hall with the announcement that no one could take from them the mandate given them by their electors. The majority greeted this announcement with silence, and Dan's resolution was quietly dropped into oblivion. The session dragged out like a death agony. In tired voices, the compromisers kept on assuring each other that they were right. Ceccarelli, in his character of Postmaster General, entered a complaint against his employers. I just now learned of the strike of the postal and telegraph workers. As to their political demands, their slogans are the same. All power to the Soviets. Delegates from the demonstrators, now surrounding the Tauride Palace on all sides, demanded admission to the meeting. They were admitted with alarm and hostility. The delegates, however, sincerely believed that this time the compromisers could not help coming to meet them. Had not today's issues of the Menshevik and Social Revolutionary papers wrought upon the resignation of the cadets, themselves exposed the intrigues and sabotage of their bourgeois allies. Moreover, the workers' section had come out in favor of a Soviet government. What else was there to wait for? But their fervent appeals, in which hope still mingled with indignation, dropped impotent and inappropriate into the stagnant atmosphere of that parliament of compromise. The leaders had but one thought: how quickest to get rid of their uninvited guest. To suggest that they withdraw to the gallery, to drive them back into the street to the demonstrators, would be indiscreet. In the gallery, machine gun men were listening with amazement to the evolving debate, which had only one goal: to gain time. The compromisers were waiting for reliable regiments. A revolutionary people is in the streets, cried Dan, but that people is engaged in a counter-revolutionary work. Dan was supported by Abramovich, one of the leaders of the Jewish Bund, a conservative pedant whose every instinct had been outraged by the revolution. We are witnesses to a conspiracy, he asserts, in defiance of the obvious, and he proposes to the Bolsheviks that they openly announce that this is their work. I have to pause right here. This is funny because so many people claim that the Bolsheviks taking over Russia was a Jewish conspiracy, even though only a handful of the top Bolsheviks were Jews, such as Trotsky. But it's funny here because the Jewish Bund, which, if I remember right, in Lithuania, they were very radical. The Bund are essentially like socialist Jews who created like autonomous zones, if I remember right, in Lithuania or Latvia. I forgot which Baltic country, etc. But this was all part of the Russian Empire, etc., etc. The Bund was against the Bolsheviks. So the Jews are looking at the Bolsheviks and saying, this is a conspiracy. I mean, come on. I mean, the jokes write themselves. That's pretty funny. The Jews are looking at the Bolsheviks and saying, you guys are a conspiracy from abroad. I don't know who's funding you, but it ain't us. I'm sorry. That's just funny. That's just funny. And I stand against anti-Semitism. You know what I mean? I am not an enemy to Jewish people at all. I love Jewish people. Jewish girls are some of the hottest girls on the planet, in my opinion. Even though that means nothing. That's like somebody saying, I'm not racist, I love black pussy. But I'm just saying, I'm just throwing everything against the wall to fight accusations for anybody who's going to clip that out of context that somehow Simon Hill hates Jewish people. But I think it's funny. I think it's very funny that the Jews at the time are saying the Bolsheviks are a conspiracy. If I'm understanding that right. All right. Gloria Watkins says the wording is ironic, nothing close. I don't know what you're saying, Gloria. You have to explain yourself better. Okay? So, Cesarelli deepens the discussion. To go out into the streets with the demand, all power to the Soviets, is that to support the Soviets? If the Soviets so desired, the power would pass to them. There is no obstacle anywhere to the will of the Soviets. Such a manifestation is not along the road of revolution, but of counter-revolution. These considerations the workers' delegates could not possibly understand. It seemed to them that the high-up leaders were a little bit out of their heads. The meeting at last resolved once more, by all votes except 11, that an armed manifestation would be a stab in the back of the revolutionary army, etc., etc. The meeting adjourned at 5 o'clock in the morning. The masses were gradually gathered back into their districts. Armed automobiles traveled all night, uniting regiments, factories, and district centers. As in the last days of February, the masses spent the night casting the balance of the day's struggle. But now they did this with the aid of a complicated system of organizations, factory, party, and regimental, which conferred continually. In the districts, it was considered self-evident that the movement could not stop halfway. The executive committee had postponed the decision about the power. The masses regarded that as a wavering. The conclusion was clear. We must bring more pressure to bear. A night session of Bolsheviks and Mezharansky meeting in the Tarai Palace, simultaneously with the executive committees, also cast the balance of the day and tried to foretell what the morrow would bring. Reports from the districts testified that today's demonstration had merely set the masses in motion, presenting in their minds nakedly for the first time the question of power. Tomorrow the factories and regiments would go after the answer, and no force in the world could hold them in the suburbs. The debate was not about whether to summon the masses to a seizure of power, as enemies later asserted, but about whether to try to call the demonstration the next morning or to stand at the head of it. Late in the night, or rather at about 3 o'clock in the morning, the Putilov factory approached the Tsaride Palace, a mass of 80,000 workers, many with wives and children. The procession had started at 11 o'clock in the evening, and other belated factories had joined it on the road. In spite of the late hour, there was such a mass of people at the Narva gate as to suggest that nobody stayed home that night in the whole district. The women had exclaimed, "Everybody must go. We will watch the houses." At a signal from the belfry of the Church of the Savior, shots had rattled out as though from a machine gun. From below, a volley was fired at the belfry. Near Gostiny Dvor, a company of junkers and students fell upon the demonstrators and tried to tear away their placards. The workers resisted. The crowd piled up. Somebody fired a shot. The writer of these lines got his head broken, his sides and chest badly mashed by trampling feet. These are the words of the worker Efimov, already known to us. Passing across the whole town, silent now, the Putilov men finally arrived at the Tsaride Palace. Thanks to the insistent efforts of Ryazanov, closely associated at that time with the trade unions, a delegation was admitted to the executive committee. The throng of workers, hungry and dead tired, scattered about on the street and in the garden, a majority immediately stretching themselves out, thinking to wait there for an answer. The entire Putilov factory lying there on the ground at 3 o'clock in the morning around the Tsaride Palace, where the democratic leaders were waiting for the arrival of troops from the front. That is one of the most startling pictures offered by the revolution on this summit of the past between February and October. 12 years before, no small number of these same workers had participated in the January procession to the Winter Palace with icons and religious standards. Ages had passed since that Sunday afternoon. Other ages will pass during the next 4 months. The somber image of these Putilov workers lying down in the courtyard hung over the conference of Bolshevik leaders and organizers as they debated about the next day's plans. Tomorrow, the Putilovsky will refuse to work. Yes, and what work would they be good for after the night's vigil? Zinoviev was summoned to the telephone. Raskolnikov had rung up from Kronstadt to say that tomorrow early in the morning, the garrison of the fortress would start for Petrograd, and nobody and nothing could stop it. The young midshipman was holding on in suspense at the other end of the wire. Would the Central Committee order him to break with the Soviets and ruin himself in their eyes? To the picture of the Putilov factory as a gypsy camp was thus joined the no less suggestive picture of the sailors' island getting ready in those sleepless hours of the night to support the workers and soldiers Petrograd. No, the situation was too clear. There was no more room for wavering. Trotsky inquired for the last time, can we, nevertheless, try to make it an unarmed demonstration? No, there can be no question of that. One squad of junkers can scatter tens of thousands of unarmed workers like a flock of sheep. The soldiers and the workers, too, will regard that proposal as a trap. The answer was categorical and convincing. All unanimously decided to summon the masses in the name of the party to prolong the demonstration on the next day. Zinoviev hastened to relieve the mind of Raskolnikov, languishing at the other end of the telephone. An address to the workers and soldiers was immediately drawn up into the streets. Okay, so we have our final paragraph right here. It's been a long episode, but I'm glad to be back on live with the people, going hard. I had a very good time with y'all. Shout out to everybody new who joined the live stream. If you have any comments or questions for me, put it in the chat, because we only have one more paragraph to read before we wrap it up for today. The afternoon summons from the Central Committee to stop the demonstration was torn from the presses, but too late to replace it with a new text. A white page in Pravda the next morning will be deadly evidence against the Bolsheviks. Evidently getting frightened at the last moment, they withdrew the appeal for an insurrection, or maybe just the opposite. Maybe they renounced an earlier appeal for a peaceful demonstration in order to go in for insurrection. Meanwhile, the real decision of the Bolsheviks was issued on a separate leaflet. It summoned the workers and soldiers by way of a peaceful and organized demonstration to bring their will to the attention of the executive committees now in session. No, that was not a summons to insurrection. Very powerful chapter, once again from Trotsky. Very poetic writer, very calculated writer, very in detail, in-depth writer. Really love this guy, and I really love this book as well. This was a wild, winding read for many reasons. We had a lot of comments that I had to get to and get through, but I'm glad that all of y'all showed up and showed out. I want to take a screenshot to send my wife, because I'm always proud whenever I get donations. Remember, I am a university student here in Budapest, Hungary. So anytime you donate to this channel, it goes directly towards tuition. Take a little screenshot right there. Gonna send that to the missus after we close up this live stream. And yeah, I don't come on live and beg for money. I only have a donate to this channel tab open where you can donate if you want to, but I really don't care. I'm here to disrupt YouTube by flooding their servers with content that they don't like. Probably is a net loss for them because my content gets so little views and so little interaction that YouTube probably is hurt more by having this content up than gaining more. It's not like this is, top tier content that gets people tuned in. I'm trying to do whatever I can to bring down capitalism from the inside. And the way we do that is by flooding the zone. But it's also a great way for me to interact with the people, share with the people. This has never been done on YouTube before. Nobody has ever read some of these Marxist texts, and I'm just doing my best to radicalize the next generation. You know what I'm saying? Because that is very important.